The dark truth about low-income life that middle-class kids could not handle. I learned that kids in some of these families have to help pay the bills. Learning that was rough. Inconveniences for normal people, like parking tickets, a malfunctioning fridge, a flat tire, these are potentially catastrophic for poor people with no financial cushions. Malfunctioning fridge is not just a repair expense, it can take out a week's groceries with it. It's not a joke. If I may, I grew up in the middle class until the recession of 2008. That's when both parents lost their jobs and we went to food stamps. I realized that vacations weren't things we took every year. Expensive toys couldn't be bought right then and there. We were lucky to have 3 meals a day, every day. My parents lost the house and we still haven't gotten back to where we were, but I do appreciate how hard my parents tried to provide everything for us. I grew up poor. When I went to prom, a rich girl in one of my classes gave me a dress. She knew my family's situation and just bought it to me in a bag a couple of weeks before the dance. I hemmed it, cut off the sleeves, and I was at home the day of the prom doing my hair, makeup, and nails myself. It shocked me that all the other girls were at salons. I was a punk and wore band tees and combat boots usually. I showed up to the prom looking really good. Everyone was shocked, and the principal even came over to me and commented on how I looked. I hated almost everyone at my school, but that night I felt like I belonged. I could share my experiences growing up poor too, like eating 2 pieces of bread with just mustard and ketchup on it for dinner. Or when my mum would beg the water company for just a few more days to come up with the money for the bill, but they'd shut off our water anyway. We'd use bottled water to bathe and brush our teeth. I'm what you'd call well off now, and I appreciate the heck out of everything I have and how far I've come. I'm glad that I grew up the way I did. I think it made me a better person. I'm not pretentious or judgmental, and I love helping other people out, because I can now. I'm really late to this, but here it goes. I didn't realize that some kids had to work to help their family pay the bills. I realized this at military boot camp. I joined the military because I failed out of college the first go-round. My bunkmate got his first paycheck and told me how excited he was to send it to his parents so that they could pay their electricity bill. I got my first paycheck and I left it in my footlocker because I didn't have any other use for it. Later on, he told me he joined the military because he knew that the electricity would always be on. Yeah, the narrator met someone who's in a really high-end job now that basically sends all of his money home to his family. Even though I know this is a thing, it gives me pause to know that not everyone's parents are this reliable source of just free food and eternal caregiver dynamic outside of my little world. I always thought that people talking about their fridge being empty was an exaggeration. Like there's plenty of food, just nothing you want to eat. Then I started dating a girl who didn't have a lot of money, and I opened the fridge door and I saw only Hawaiian punch and ketchup. And I was just like, well, crap. Those couple of days between the last shopping trip running out and my parents' next paycheck was the worst. Scrounging to put together a meal but always coming through, my mom was an angel. That many kids didn't eat lunch at school because there was no program or their family just didn't have the money or resources. Eating out at restaurants isn't common for everyone. My mum gave a girl on my basketball team a ride home from an away game. I can't remember what the reason was. We decided to grab a bite to eat and asked her if she had a preference. She picked a buffet place, saying that was where her family goes. Turns out it was the only restaurant she'd been to other than fast food from time to time. A few months later, she was with us at an Italian place that was slightly upscale, and she didn't know how to order, so my mum did it for her. For dessert, she asked for cherry cheesecake and then whispered to me that she'd just scrape the cherries off. I flagged down the server and had them change it to a plain cheesecake. I felt so sorry for her because she was just uncomfortable. I also realized I was pretty spoiled and I appreciated my parents so much more after that. I hated going to restaurants with friends when I became old enough to go because my family literally never ate out, so I didn't know what to do. I'd get really panicky placing an order and I'd never know the etiquette for, say, asking for a refill or stuff. My husband, funnily enough, has the opposite problem and used to freak out when he has to go on public transportation. That all your brothers and sisters sometimes sleep on the same bed or on the floor. That some families are so poor their children only went to school for the free food. In some places, there are programs to feed those children during school holidays because they usually only get a meal at school. I went to private school and there was a girl that I assume was on a scholarship or financial aid, and she always smelled real bad. I saw her putting on deodorant in the bathroom once, and I guess I must have stared a second too long because she told me that she didn't have anything clean to wear because her mum didn't have money for the laundromat that week. I couldn't believe that people had to wear dirty clothes until they could go to the laundromat. I just thought everyone had a washing machine in their house. A high school by me recently added a laundry room for students to use if they had a need. They can talk to the coordinator, move loads between classes, and have clean clothing available by the end of the day. That the kids doing bad at school weren't always bad students or lazy. They didn't have enough to eat, they were malnourished, and they couldn't concentrate. I was so poor as a kid that the week of the month that the government cheese block was delivered was exciting for me, and horribly depressing when the cheese ran out, because it meant 3 more weeks of no cheese. It was exciting because everything else I ate was so bad that this cheese was delicious and the only real highlight in my life at that point. That you could reach adulthood without ever learning to read. I had a McJob where one guy wouldn't date and label the food he prepped. Turns out he wasn't just cutting corners, he didn't know how. It blew my mind that not only would the school system let him reach adulthood without teaching him to read, but that he could function in today's society with only knowing a handful of written words. I dated a girl that was from a very rich family, and she'd never turn lights off when she left any room. I'd walk around the house and turn lights off, and she just didn't understand why. I'll share the story that woke me the F up. I was a manager on a PC refresh, where we had employees out in the field. Since they were traveling, one of their perks was that we gave them $50 a day for food, and all they had to do was send in their receipts. I was approving receipts for the week, and I noticed that one of our employees had only submitted a receipt for $25. So I called him to make sure he understands how the reimbursement process worked, and to ask for the rest of his receipts, which were typically around $300 a week. He told me that all he bought for the week was bread and bologna since he didn't have the money to front the expenses, which is why the receipt was so low. I was floored, and that's when I started to realize what it means to not have any savings or access to credit. Needless to say, we fronted him the money the next week. My boss asked me to buy a $50 part out of pocket the other day, and that he'd pay me back when I got back to work. And I was thinking, damn, if we hadn't just gotten paid, I would have had to tell him I couldn't buy it. Luckily, I got to avoid that awkward interaction. It rather isn't a case of not believing, but one of having no awareness. I heavily underestimated how deep-rooted the cancellation, sorry, can't, no money, goes. For me, financial refusals always meant that I'd rather spend it on other amenities. No international vacation for me because I want that fancy bag or coat or something. Or let me rephrase precisely, I have money, just alternate investment priorities. I'm by no means rich, just normal middle class and only child rich. But I took far too long for the realization that someone who doesn't have enough money to partake in something had made frustrating calculations leading up to that, and probably endured a lot of disappointing cancellations before. You don't just get up and go to the doctor when you're sick or for a yearly physical. Yes, here in the US. A good friend sums it up for me. Doctors are for rich people here. The narrator is about to go to the States again, and although there's a lot to love about it, one thing that always makes me feel sick to my stomach is the sheer scale of homeless and addicted people who clearly need medical help, contrasted by all the private ambulances prowling around looking for their next multi-thousand-dollar semi-willing customer. Gross. I didn't have a concept of kids not having new clothes, toys, and electronic devices. The idea of something being pre-used I thought only came from yard sales, and you didn't have to get things that way. It was just better off because they often had toys that you couldn't find at a store. The idea of going to bed hungry, I thought it only happened in third world countries. I'd seen homeless people, but I believed they were alcoholics. In general, anyone struggling for the basics of life, I just really didn't understand. My school had a breakfast program for kids who were less well off, and I thought they just went out there to hang out with their friends, or their parents were too lazy to make them breakfast. I didn't understand why some kids couldn't go on field trips. Family vacations just seemed normal to me. I think the worst part of it all was believing my family was actually poor. Sure, we didn't have the newest toys or electronics as soon as they came out, and our clothes did come from Walmart, and we were never out of the country for a vacation. My parents were always complaining about not having any money for bills and things they wanted to do, but as I got older I realized they just didn't manage their money well. We lived in a house that they owned, we had enough food that a lot of it went bad, had mountains of toys and a lot of video games, and we were generally getting $500 to $700 worth of new things each Christmas. Living on my own with no financial support from them has taught me a lot, and I'm grateful about that. I just wish I had understood this growing up so I knew how lucky I was. I thought people on food stamps were people trying to game the system. Now I'm an adult on food stamps, and it's the only way I can make ends meet. We get so much stigma and hate. The other day someone posted on Facebook about people on food stamps having $600 phones. I have an Obama phone and it doesn't work half the time. Just how little some people are paid. When I was younger, I figured that approximately $40K a year was the lowest someone could possibly earn. That people used credit cards because they didn't have the money at the time, instead of a convenient way to earn points by paying cards off in full each month. I learned this after moving away from university. Turns out loan payments and paychecks don't always come in at convenient times. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? I have no idea how a person's able to support themselves. I thought I knew everything coming out of high school. What I found out was that I lived in a super small bubble. I have friends that don't have parents who grew up essentially homeless and are doing amazingly well for what they've come from. A lot of this revelation was also attributed to me moving out as well. When I got to college, I realized that some students were paying their own way. That was humbling. I wasn't exactly from a rich family, but I couldn't get my mind around that. That some people can't afford to fill up their car with petrol. I loved when I used to read articles of money-saving tips hoping for something new to me. When they started out with a save $5 a day by cutting out pricey coffee drinks, I knew I could just close the tab, because if I had $5 to spend on coffee every day, I sure as heck wouldn't be walking to work the last 3 days of every pay period because I was out of gas. That was a few years and a couple of jobs ago. I no longer struggle to buy gasoline. That not everybody has a passport. People give Americans crap for this, but it's pointless to have one if you're so poor you'll never be able to leave the country anyway. From the flip side, when I was in college, I actually lost friends because I couldn't afford to do the activities they did, like going to bars every weekend or going to multiple concerts or raves or festivals over the summer. It was partly about not having the money and partly about not being able to take time off work. It was embarrassing to be 20 and tell other 20-year-olds I couldn't afford what they took for granted. So I'd tell them I didn't like bars or I didn't like raves. They took that to mean I didn't like them. I had to tell one of my friends that I just couldn't take off on a plane, which I'd never been on, to go to New York City with her to see the ball drop. I've worked straight through what would be considered Christmas break. In fact, I'm taking the next semester off so that I can work full-time. I can't get by on a part-time retail check. I don't have mum and dad's money to pay for my rent, car insurance, gas, phone bill, or groceries. She wants me to go to Canada with her this summer, and I'm wondering where I'll get money to buy a passport. That you could actually try really hard and still not get hired for a better job. I grew up thinking that if people just tried harder, they'd get a better situation. I had no idea that so much is stacked against people living in poverty, that most live $200 from insolvency, where a fender bender can result in losing transportation, which can result in losing a job, which results in losing where you live. I went to high school in a nearby city and befriended a friend who lived in the projects. She lived with 3 grandparents, 2 aunts, her mother, 2 sisters, and herself in an incredibly small 2-bedroom, 3rd-floor walk-up. I didn't think people lived like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory family, but this family did. They all shared beds, and the grandparents stayed in the bed in the living room 90% of the time. I hope that they at least didn't have a Grandpa Joe staying in that little Roald Dahl arrangement. Oh, who am I kidding? Someone that selfish and deceitful probably wouldn't be allowed in the house by their family. When he was growing up, my dad had 2 shirts and 2 pairs of pants. When he was wearing one, he hand-washed the other. Then he spent his whole life making sure his kids and grandkids would have more than he had. Thanks, Dad. It's not something I disbelieved, just something I didn't know or understand. That it's a matter of course that they make sacrifices in order to help their friends, family, and community members. I used to advise at a community college with a largely impoverished student population. Every now and then, a student would tell me a story that boiled down to something like, I didn't get to study for the final exam the night before because my neighbor's car broke down and I had to give him a ride to work. I was baffled by how often I'd heard something like that. In my world, you'd apologize to your neighbor and say you absolutely have to study for the exam tonight. But I eventually learned that when you grow up in poverty, you help that neighbor because you don't know when you might need their help. Looking out for number one is not how you survive in that world. Or rather, looking out for other people is how you look out for number one as well. Eating squirrels is an actual thing. My family used to subsistence hunt. Squirrel was one of those animals you could always count on there to be a lot of. First time I cooked a squirrel for my wife, she thought I was joking. She had grown up feeding cute little squirrels in the park. No, this wasn't in the South. Why is everyone assuming I'm in or from the South? My mom used to hunt for our dinners when I was a kid. Squirrel, rabbit, pheasant, deer, ducks. I'm sure we ate stranger crap too that she didn't tell us. I grew up dirt poor in the country. Things middle-class people didn't believe included that people don't live in single wides because they like it, they do it because it's all they can afford. Out in the sticks, a double wide with good underpinning is middle class. Having a garden is not a whimsical thing that people do for kicks, it can be the only way that you eat decent vegetables. A space heater is how you stay warm, when keeping the trailer heat on will result in a $400 utility bill, and that's more than rent or trailer mortgage. I learned to shoot a firearm at 12 because I had to help put food on the table. A single deer is good meat for a long time. There are people who are one generation removed from outhouses, if they haven't actually used one. If there's a snowstorm, canning keeps you alive because the power will be out for 2 weeks sometimes. My grandmother literally fed 10 people one winter for a week and a half. People join the military in relatively high numbers because it's the easiest way out of crushing poverty, or about the only way they're going to college. In the UK, I've genuinely encountered people from wealthy rural backgrounds who genuinely thought that house numbers were only an American thing, and that every house in Britain had a name. I'd hate to be a postman if that were the case. I ride horses, and I was shocked to learn that one of my friends had never been on a horse before. Her response was, "Horseback riding in America isn't a poor person thing. I live in suburban Florida, and yes, now I know just how correct they were." I grew up in a middle-class home, and I'm now a teacher in a Title I, aka a lower-income high school. I always knew that there were people who were less fortunate, but my first year of teaching has been a real eye-opener. 5 to 7 kids sit in my room during lunch every day, and I noticed that one student either didn't eat or had a Coke and hot Cheetos. I learned that he only sometimes had lunch money, and if he did, it was only $2 or $3. This December, many students didn't have enough warm clothes, and of that portion, most walk a mile or more to and from school. Many don't have the money for school supplies, let alone lab fees. Only some classes have lab fees, mine don't. I bought big boxes of granola bars and paper binders and stuff to give the kids whenever they need them, but as a fresh-from-college 22-year-old with $45K in debt, there's only so much I can do. It sometimes breaks my heart, but I hope being a good teacher and mentor helps them in ways that money can't.
Not something I couldn't believe, but something I didn't really realize. The temperature of the house is strictly controlled in the houses of lower-income people that I know. When I was a kid, I'd turn the heat up to 80 and set the AC at 65.
I'm horrified to remember that I used to love drying my hair in winter when I was 15 by cranking the thermostat to 85 and putting a towel down by the baseboard heating vent. I'd lie down on the towel and fan out my hair in front of the vent. The warm air was like being at the beach, and I'd read a book as my hair air-dried or until my dad got home and flipped out by how hot it was indoors in February. It never occurred to me that heat cost money, just that my dad was always too hot and liked cooler temperatures than we did.
My God, I'm only realizing now that my childhood consisted of worrying about basic needs, which is actually a completely alien concept to well-off people.
This realization when you first have it is insane. Wait, living off of instant mashed potatoes wasn't normal? That knowing from where and when money is coming is very important. I thought you just had money to buy or pay the thing and you can just use the next paycheck to pay yourself back. This is why I think it's a good thing for parents with the means to give an allowance or money for chores. They actually take the opportunity to ingrain in their kids that this money isn't going to last forever and they need to prioritize it. Once you spend your pocket money, it's gone. For all that I had a pretty privileged upbringing, we learned to hoard our weekend money like greedy little gremlins in my family. What it meant to not be able to afford something, or to be broke. My parents would say, "Oh, we can't afford that." But it really meant we'd rather spend that $1K on ourselves or on our next vacation or whatever instead of on a new toy or computer or phone for you.
"Oh, we're broke, sweetie,"
meant we've used too much money in our checking account. We'd still have saving accounts and investments, of course, so no money really just meant no more money that we'd be spending right now. Because I grew up this way, I viewed money as something that just magically never ran out. I'd really get annoyed when my friends would say, "I can't afford that," or "I'm broke," as a reason for not doing something because I viewed it as an excuse instead of a reality. The first time as an adult when I literally couldn't afford something because the $50 check I'd deposited hadn't gone through and so my debit card was declined was a surreal and horrible feeling. I suddenly understood what "I'm broke" and "I can't afford that" really meant. Well, my dad grew up extremely poor, and because of this he worked very hard to make sure we were middle class and that myself and my siblings were better off than he was. The one story he always told us that I almost couldn't believe was that in school, can't remember what grade level or how old he was, but he had an art assignment to draw his favorite pair of shoes. He didn't have a favorite pair, he only had one pair of sneakers that he had for over a year. They were ratty and gross, but that's all his family could afford. He was embarrassed and didn't do the project, and his teacher pointed it out in class. So my dad just walked up to his desk, took a shoe off and placed it on the teacher's desk, and just said, "That's why." My teacher didn't know what to say, So my dad took off his shoes and sat back down. That story always blew my mind and made me realize how lucky I was since I didn't have to worry about where my shoes were coming from. That actually I now drive my mum crazy because I make sure to use my shoes and other clothes as long as I can, even though they're extremely old, but it makes me feel a little better knowing I'm using things to the fullest rather than until they're out of season or anything like that.
People who saved all of their money at a young age instead of living and now are 50+ years old. How are your lives today? Do you regret your life choices when it comes to the money aspect? We scrimped for decades. Our house is paid off. We have one car payment for 3 more months. We have no credit card debt. Our retirement savings are ahead of schedule. Next week we head to Iceland for my 52nd birthday. Totally worth it. Nobody wants to be 75, sick, and too poor to quit working, no matter how much fun you had as a 20-something. I did mostly stupid things in my early 20s, but I always put at least 15% of my income into 401ks with matching benefits. After 24 years living the corporate middle manager cube life, we had the means to purchase a wholesale nursery, and now I'm a flower farmer. I just walked through my greenhouse with my dog with a cup of coffee, and I do not regret a penny of savings. Losing my job as a fairly well-paid engineering manager in the defense industry and having to sell my house during the housing crash in the early 90s ended up, in retrospect, being a defining moment in my current financial well-being. It took roughly 6 years to get back to anywhere near my former career trajectory after landing a good position in the cellular industry. Once brunt, twice shy, my wife, a registered nurse, and I bought a home that was about half the price the bank said we qualified for. Our reasoning being, if one of us lost our job, most likely me again, because nurses, we wouldn't have to lose our home again. Fortunately, that never happened. We were both able to advance in our careers and were able to pay off our mortgage in 7 years, fully fund our son's college education, max out our IRA contributions, and have literally no debt. My wife just paid cash for a Subaru Forester, not the fanciest of cars or a status symbol by any means, but she loves it. Today is literally my last day at work before I voluntarily retire early at the age of 58. I feel like this is for the most part going to be very one-sided, except for people who have had just rotten luck in finances or maybe property investment or something like that, or bad tenants. We lived far below our means for nearly 30 years, saving all the money we could, bought a nice piece of property in the woods and started building a house, paid for construction out of our savings, took years to build, ended up with our dream house with no debt at all. Early 50s, I work at my profession part-time and my wife gardens, almost retired, totally worth it. While we were in savings mode, it didn't seem like we were sacrificing. Still had a great time with life, just drove cheaper cars and lived in a small house, took vacations to visit friends instead of going to resorts. Living within our means meant we had no money worries after we got out of our 20s. I didn't live while at college. While all of my friends went to university and are in mountains of debt, I went to a junior college to get all of my basic classes out of the way, and then went part-time to university, which was cheaper and I could afford it while working a part-time job. It was a local university, so I had to live with mom and dad until I was 26, which sucked and I missed out on a lot of independence that comes with going away to school, but it was worth it. I graduated in 6 years with my BA instead of 4, but with no debt. Without a monthly student loan, I was able to pay off my car quickly and can afford a lot of other things: phones, computers, vacations, tools, Legos, etc., without worrying about where the money will come from. My wife and I live comfortably, she did the same thing, and we currently have a house, a 3-year-old, and newer cars. I survived cancer surgery. All of those have been paid off except for the house, which will be paid off 10 years before it's due. We currently have 30 grand in checking and 42 grand in savings, in large part because we sacrificed when we were younger. Point of reference, 55 years old, did most everything the way you're supposed to. School, real jobs, lived conservatively, married, lowish tolerance for risk, yada yada. It depends on one's definition of living, but for the most part, most of my regrets are about not having lived or taken chances, or however you want to say it. It became apparent to me when I was an editor of a windsurfing magazine, and around a lot of the sailors we covered, I was the one with a steady job and paycheck. A wife, I owned a home, drove a decent car. These guys were drifters, irresponsible couch surfing, earning poverty wages, teaching windsurfing at various vacation destinations when they weren't competing. Most traveled around with pretty much everything they owned, their gear and clothes, and lived with their parents some of the time and friends and folks they met on the road at other times. Rarely did these guys have health insurance or more than a couple $100 to their name at any one time. Yet these losers on the fast track to nowhere spoke multiple languages, traveled the world, and experienced things that I never did or will. Plus, if I compared notes with any of them now, 15+ years later, our lives probably wouldn't be all that different. It's not like I'm some multi-millionaire or or saving lives or changing the world. I'm just a regular schmuck with a regular job like most of them likely are. But when we reflect, they've got a crap ton more cool stuff to remember than I do, much of which probably shaped them to be as cool now as I thought they were back then. I'll be 50 in February. I was a workaholic in my 20s and 30s and tried to save money, in that I didn't travel, take vacations, buy new cars or new clothes, etc. I missed out on 2 women who could have been great wives and mothers and instead married an insane person at 34. It took me a decade and her adultery for me to realize I could never change how her brain worked. She had 3 diagnosed conditions, and I finally got out. Now I'm too old to remarry or have children, and due to bad luck and 2 recessions, I have little to show for it. Although I do live in a nice house because my father left it to me when he died. I'm a tad regretful that I didn't live when I was young and had more energy. Many of my friends did and still do get into relationships and travel, have children, and live life to the fullest. I'm getting to the point where I don't have the will to try again. This is the first time I have written this publicly. Definitely unfortunate about the crazy wife. I don't think you're going to find anybody in this thread that says, "Oh boy, I wished I had lived a little more in my 30s and now my spouse is dead and it was all a waste." What you'll find are people who lived the life they wanted to live. If traveling the world wasn't important at age 21 or 50, I doubt it will become hugely important at age 51. And if it does, awesome for them. The world has changed a lot in the last 30 years and they'll have different experiences than someone who, say, traveled, partied, spent money earlier in life. Each has its own pros and cons. Not to be a negative Ned here, but I just want to point out that all the savers who died before being able to spend their nest egg won't be commenting for obvious reasons, although I'm sure their next of kin were grateful. I'm a 27-year-old that saves and invests more than 50% of my income, so I'll probably be the kind of person you're referring to around 50 or so. I think the relationship between living and spending need not be so highly correlated. I think many people have consumerism addiction where they need to buy a product to get a dopamine hit, whether the product adds to their life in a meaningful way or not. I live in a cheap apartment, drive a used car, eat food I make mostly myself, go on long hikes on trails where I'm not charged, train for and compete in marathons a couple of times a year, surf, never buy a new board. There's no reason why living needs to be so expensive that it results in no money being saved. The routine for many people seems to be work plus suffer, purchase product to feel relief, put product in garage amongst the other thousands of things you don't use, bank and investment account remains at $0. This is not a good cycle. Nah, wait a minute. He's got a point. Yeah, I definitely nominate this one so far as the best one I've heard. I'm an aging Gen Xer and it was totally worth it. House is paid for, so the mortgage money goes to investment, kids, and fun. My wife was able to quit her job and stay at home since one salary was enough now. She may go back to work just to keep busy and because she wants to. We almost never paid interest on anything except the mortgage when we had it. Credit cards paid in full each month. We saved to buy cars and never financed them. We also keep cars for 10 to 20 years to maximize their value. My wife is a fanatic couponer and saved hundreds every month. She also just knows her prices and knows a good deal. So when it's time to spend, we spend wisely. I also insist on quality, so we will spend more if something is worth it. Additionally, we paid off the house in 10 years rather than 30. Between the cars, house, and credit cards, we saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on interest, which all went to investments. We max out our 401k contributions each year. IRA for wife now. I know things are harder now and I feel for the millennials who want to do what I did but just can't. I work with many of them. I'm the old guy at work and they are great people. All smart, aware, and hardworking. I don't see the entitled thing at all. Maybe I live in a bubble, but this generation is pretty cool. Learn from parents who grew up in the Depression with 6 children. We were still able to live below our means and never felt like we were going without. If you use your imagination, there are plenty of things you can do for free and have fun. We made it a point to set aside part of my check first into a retirement account. My wife did not work, but worked hard staying home with our kids and housekeeping. Paid off the house in 17 years instead of 30 and actually retired early. All our children are self-sufficient and we are worth well over 7 figures. The funny thing is, even with all this money, we still don't splurge but have everything we need. I think the trick is to realize the difference between needs and wants. I have to thank my parents for this. We always asked ourselves, do we need this or want this? Also ask yourself if you can buy buy this used. We have always bought used cars with cash and kept them until the wheels fell off. We also gave generously to local charities as we felt so fortunate. So here's my deal. Retired at 52 but got killed earlier with a bad divorce and still managed to retire early. I've been sailing a yacht for 7 years now, halfway around the world. How? Absolutely put a minimum of 20% of your gross income away. If you can't get most of that into a tax-deferred account, you should be looking at 25 to 30%. Cold hard reality, no magic and no wishing. That's a big chunk of your income. If you haven't started it, it will hurt too much, so you'll likely fail. I always advise you start with what you can manage, then increase it when you get a raise. As in, up your savings by at least half of the raise. Get to 20%. Get that money into the market while young. Try to get it automatically deposited into your retirement account so you don't see it, so you're not tempted. Other tips: get out of debt. Debt equals slavery. Never borrow unless you must, as in a house, buy a car that you can afford to pay with cash. Save for it if you must. It's an old concept, but credit is for the weak and those who will work into old age. Face it, you're a working stiff. The only time you pay yourself is when you invest in your freedom, your retirement. All other expenditures prolong your enslavement.
Yeah, man, we're all nothing but sleeping slaves for the government, man.
I'm 44, so I'm not 50 plus yet, but I've invested mostly 401k, as much as I could afford since I started my first real job in 1994. As long as the economy doesn't do another 2008 anytime soon, I'm on track to retire by 55, maybe a year or two earlier with some luck. We simply don't live like we've got a lot of money. My wife's car is a 2008 Kia. Until a few months ago, I was driving a 2000 Saturn. I bought a 2013 Chevy Volt, used, and love it. I love not having to pump gas all the time, and I end up spending less to drive that way. Electricity is cheaper than gas. I gave my 2000 Saturn to my daughter to have something to drive at college. My eldest started college this year, and while she will have a little bit of student debt, a couple thousand each year, we'll probably pay it off once our mortgage is paid off in a year or two. It was more of a cash flow issue than anything. The original plan was to have the house completely paid off by the time the eldest started college, but we had a couple of years where we had to stop paying ahead on the mortgage due to the unexpected medical expenses. So now we're a little behind schedule on that. When we were looking for houses 15 years ago, the realtors were trying to get us to buy houses based on what we could afford, which meant that they were trying to get us to buy McMansions. I had to fire one realtor because she wouldn't stop, even after we told her we weren't interested in anything beyond 2.5 times my annual salary. So yeah, we could be living in a house that's valued at 2 or 3 times the one we live in, but then I wouldn't be retiring at 55. Honestly, it's all about delaying gratification and intentionally not choosing the most expensive thing you can afford. Our kids get 3 presents for Christmas, and none of them cost more than $30. That's better than my folks could afford, but it's not extravagant. I have work colleagues who spend $300 plus on their kids per Christmas. That's crazy to me. Our newest car until a month or two ago was a 2008. Many people won't delay gratification that long. They want a new car every 3 years. By taking care of what you have, it can last a lot longer. My eldest is driving the 2000 Saturn, and despite having 120,000 miles, it looks and runs like new. I learned to do regular maintenance myself, changing brakes, fluids, tires, even replaced the air conditioning compressor with one from a junkyard years ago. That Saturn has never had anything other than synthetic oil, things like that. You take care of stuff, it lasts a long time. And don't be so prideful that you have to have new stuff all the time. I mean, is impressing your neighbors that important to you that it's worth an extra 15 years of work? Not to me it isn't. Based on how things are sitting right now financially, we're on track for compounding interest to take over within a decade and match our income from working. At that point, we won't be able to spend it all unless our taste changes dramatically, and I wouldn't expect that. Once we reach that point, it'll just be a matter of slowly shifting all the investments to lower and lower risk, like rental income, bonds, and money markets, until the income stream is pretty safe, and then I won't work anymore. Okay, I'm craving a different perspective on this now. I'm 46 and don't really have much of a retirement. I was a teacher in the South and mostly just lived paycheck to paycheck, just getting by. But this isn't really about me, although I'm sure the circumstances has colored how I view money and savings. My 2 sisters and I grew up poor, although we really had no idea just how poor we were. My father worked a factory job with all of the overtime he could get while my mother stayed home with us till we were in 5th grade. My father had refused to allow her to work before marriage. My mom worked and lived with her parents, saving virtually every cent she made for her future home. After marriage, my father decided to spend her savings on a 2-bedroom trailer to sit on my grandfather's property instead of investing in the home of which my mom had always dreamed. Years went by and the house they had hoped to build traveled no closer, and the trailer falling down about our ears. They had the house plans but no money to build, and my father refused to take out a loan, insisting that they pay for it as they could. At this point, after countless arguments, my father agreed to allow my mom to return to work. I was in 5th grade. I remember watching our house slowly take shape behind the trailer. Mom had promised we could have a sleepover when it was completed. We moved into the mostly complete house my sophomore year of high school, but much work remained and still remains. My mother died of pancreatic cancer when she was 53, having never seen her house completed or driven a new car. She saved and scraped her entire life and never got to enjoy the things she most wished for. This was nearly 25 years ago. So yes, I understand the necessity of saving, but more so, I understand the importance of spending and enjoying life while you have it. I'm 30 and saved to a fault until I started my own company 3 years ago. I'm already considerably way ahead of my peers and have opportunities to get in deals that most wouldn't be a part of. The first 100k is tough, but compounding interest is a real thing. I have always lived well below my means, and the freedom I have now was completely worth skipping the 2k spring breaks during college. I wasn't sure the saving would be worth it, but it absolutely, completely is and was. I don't save as much anymore because my net worth is mostly tied to my business. I still save more than most, but not 50 to 70% of my income like before. When I lost 35k in a month of business ownership, saving $3 on coffee seemed a bit trivial. Bonus, it's true. Money won't make you happy. Not having money will make you unhappy. But having 1 million instead of 500k isn't really life-changing. I plan on making a lot more because I enjoy creating value, and that's how capitalism works. I don't think anyone needs more than 10 million, but that's just me. 300k guaranteed a year in interest and dividends without touching the principal, it's pretty good living. Spending 1,000 a day for the rest of your life would be exhausting. My opinion has changed before, but I value my time more than money now. Getting from 10 to 100 million seems like a whole lot of work and risk and stress for not very much change in lifestyle. I have employees making well above 70k magic number and they're still broke and trying to keep up with the Jones. Living paycheck to paycheck seems horrendous. Your 45k truck doesn't make me think you're cool. It makes me think you're stupid. Minimalism solves a lot of problems. Spend on what makes you happy, not on what other people might think of you. Buy quality over quantity and always live below your means. When I first started as a nurse, I had a patient who was in his early 50s. I was his nurse for 3 days in a row and got to know him and his family relatively well. The background is him and his wife had saved all of their lives so they could retire early and comfortably, working pretty long hours and sacrificing experiences so they could eventually enjoy retirement. They had retired 6 months prior to his hospitalization and had bought a large house and an RV so they could travel across the USA. Shortly after retiring, he had started acting odd and they went in for a checkup. He was found to have a large glioblastoma and was given a life expectancy of about 7 months. He had already started having personality changes and the wife was in tears most of the time, at least when I had him. At the end of my shift on my last day, she gave me a hug and told me that she would have done things differently if she could. She said she wished she would have worked less and enjoyed life more rather than always looking forward. She whispered, "All the money in the world doesn't matter if you don't have anyone to spend it with." I remember seeing his obituary a few months later, but the moment really stuck with me. My wife and I are saving a lot now, but we're making sure not to restrict ourselves too much because who knows? Life is too darn short. Even though it really sucks that that guy died before he could use the money or do whatever the hell they wanted to do together, I think it's probably good to know that at least, your significant other is going to live relatively comfortably with the money that you saved, even if you can't enjoy it with them. It's a balance. It's very important to save money and invest early if you want to retire at a reasonable age. This doesn't have to mean living like a hermit. Learning to be more resourceful, less spendthrifty, and more self-reliant is not only great on the wallet, but I have found to be very rewarding. I'm scraping by in my mid-30s, had little extra income in my 20s that I used to travel and see things. Probably could have paid off my car with it, but I don't regret it at all. I could never have had the experiences I did and met the people I did if I had waited until I was 60, and I would have missed learning about the world and different cultures that has shaped who I am today. If you have the chance to do something, take it. We're all going to die and we're all getting old. Make experiences to make life fulfilling and worth living. You won't need to travel as much when you're old, weak, tired, and no fun. Old people who have lived full lives are happy. Those who haven't are miserable. I think I'm just going to refer to the other things and be like, no, you can still have fun and, spend your money wisely. You probably should have paid your car off, to be honest. But whatever. I was always worried about balancing the present with the future when it came to money. The odds are very good that you will live to a retirement age, so not preparing for it is foolish. That being said, it's no fun going through life only preparing for the future and not living when you're young and capable of doing so much. My solution: start a 401k type account as soon as you start your career. If there's a company match, ramp up the percentage to get the full match ASAP. Every time you get a raise, increase your contribution by 1%. Hopefully, your raise is more than 1%, and you will still see an increase in net pay. Never touch that money. Roll it over if you change jobs. Invest somewhat aggressively since you are in it for decades. No need to be timid. I topped out at 12%, but with pensions pretty much gone, 15 to 20% is more realistic. Most people don't understand the concept of compounding interest. The first few decades might not seem that impressive, but the last decade of your savings can amount to a crap load of money. Not necessarily about this topic. My first roommate at med school in the Caribbean was a nice guy who studied real hard. Never drank. I forced him to come out and party maybe once. He finished everything without taking any breaks. He got accepted to a great residency program with a dual specialty a few weeks before his 23rd birthday. I spoke with him around the time, and he had a head full of gray hair and put on a lot of weight from not working out. He said he felt like he was about to turn 43, and he looked like it too. He absolutely regretted not hanging out a little more while the rest of us looked up to him and his work ethic. It really is as simple as find a healthy balance. I mean, I am more the person that spent money on trips, going places, and doing things, but as I get older, I'm getting to that point where I'm like, yeah, it's time I start buckling down and putting my money in, investments and all that stuff to try and, get ready for the future.
Parents, what is the most shocking thing you've heard, witnessed, or experienced upon meeting your child's new boyfriend or girlfriend? He recounted the story of when he drove home so drunk he lost a tire hitting something, then drove on the rim for at least 4 miles down the interstate. Thankfully, he's sober now, but is that something you want to talk about first time you meet me? Ex-girlfriend's mom greeted me with, "Did you convince my daughter to go on birth control so you could do her?" I was shocked to say the least because we had only been dating for a few weeks and she was a virgin. I wasn't pushing the issue because I really liked her. In my confused state, the GF at the time explained to me that she told her mom she wanted to do it with me and needed birth control. First encounter with her mom, and I never recovered from that. She hated me. A quote from my dad: "I didn't expect her to be black. Nothing negative, both my parents just didn't see it coming. When I was 16, I met this girl who went to high school across town through a buddy who was dating her friend. Our parents were pretty liberal and we spent most of our weekends getting high and drunk in the pool house and swimming when we wanted to cool off. Needless to say, it took about 3 days before I lost my V-card to this girl, and it was the awesomest. Here's the thing, when you're 16 and you find a girl who is DTF, you never let that go. I was immediately her boyfriend, despite the fact that I didn't know that much about her. I knew everything that I needed to know. She had a female port and she let me put my male port in it. Week 2 of this torrid romance, and something isn't quite right in the land down under. It was really burning when I took a wee, like every time. I went to Catholic school, so I knew all about how Satan invades extramarital SX and fills your lust pole with STDs. I knew I had one. The only question was which one. A lot of people asked, wait, this girl gave you an STD? You dumped her, right? Let me refer to the previous statement. I was 16 and she was letting me do it with her. We only got more serious, like getting close to meet the parents serious, but love didn't cure whatever evil was festering in my pants, and I had to schedule a doctor's appointment. In the exam room, I had to fess up to my doctor, who I'd always suspected of secretly being gay. My terrible suspicions that I had third-degree wee-wee rot with a chance of AIDS. I had to pee in a cup and he manually examined my no-no area. He asked me why I suspected I had caught an STD, and in the spirit of doctor-patient confidentiality, I told him everything, which came out to, I met a random girl from across town and I've been doing it with her everywhere. Pools, bushes, suburbans, rugs, carpet, dirt piles. I don't know much about her, but if she's willing to do it with me, she's probably kind of a lady of the night. It took me a week, but the results came back. I had a benign UTI, most likely from bareback riding in dirt piles. Clean it up was his advice. That was the giant relief, and a big F you to Sister Helen, who had convinced me that God punishes all fornicators with a lifelong curse of phallic fire. Everything seemed to be great. The down under problems cleared up, and this girl and I kept seeing each other. After a few months, she invited me to her family dinner. Her mom was nice and pretty hot. Her dad was my doctor. I could leave it there just because I think the story ends where it should, but for those who want some Animal House-style wrap-ups, here it is. All in all, it was super awkward, because it took me a while, months, to believe that he wasn't just watching for the right time to confront me about it. I couldn't look him in the eyes, and I couldn't look her mom in the eyes because I was staring at her chest, convinced that he had told her. But it turned out that her dad was super cool. He never even mentioned anything other than telling me that I should start seeing a different doctor. He let me drive his super nice car, and they took me on family vacations. They even let me sleep over in the same room as their daughter. As for the girl, we dated through most of high school. She was a year younger than me, so we broke it off when I went to college. She actually went to the same college that I did, and we got back together for a little while, but it didn't work out. I implied she was a woman of loose morals, but I would like to rescind that comment. I'll admit, once I read the bit where it's like my doctor was her father, I didn't believe it. I mean, this latter bit, it helps kind of like, cement and pull it together a little bit, but I'm still like on the fence about whether this is just a work of fiction. First time my mother met my high school girlfriend was walking into my bedroom with my girlfriend completely naked on the bed and me fully clothed on the computer. Nothing out of the ordinary here. I was the girlfriend in question. I'd come over to my long-distance relationship boyfriend's apartment on the way out of town. I had dressed in a plaid skirt, fishnets, combat boots, and a low-cut black tank because I wanted to leave him with a good memory. Things are getting saucy, downright dirty even, when suddenly his dad comes in. He'd come by early to take him to lunch and drop him at his job. I was absolutely mortified during the entire lunch with his dad, dad's girlfriend, and my boyfriend. I never thought I would strike a teenager until I saw a boy smack my daughter's butt in front of me with impunity. And I think any man or father would agree that you had every right to do so. My boyfriend in high school was a senior at a different school. I was a sophomore. At their school homecoming game, it was a tradition for all seniors to dress up in camouflage. So my mom first met him when he was dressed head to toe in black and white camouflage and wasn't aware of the tradition. As he was walking towards us, she said, "Oh, God, no," and didn't realize I'd heard her. To be fair, he was pure scum. As if coming out to my parents wasn't already shocking news, I told them a year later that I'm dating someone who's only a couple of years younger than my parents, and that I'm only interested in dating men far older than my age. We've been together for almost 5 years, married just 2 months ago, and my parents are now very accepting of us both. Strangely, they were more bummed out about me being gay than our age difference. Let's see, this goes back to 2007. First time my now ex-wife and I had met in person. Long-distance relationships are less socially stigmatic now than they were 7 years ago, but 5 years together, 2 of them married, were too much, and so she's my ex-wife. So we're sitting in a hotel watching an excellent post-coital episode of Burn Notice. Great frickin' show, yeah? Of course. When her phone rings, she picks it up, it's her mom. She says some things I really didn't understand at the moment because they seemed like gibberish, and they sighed and handed the phone to me, and this is the first thing I've ever heard this woman say: "Do you have a gun pointed at my daughter?" I fell over laughing. She'd worked out a code with her mom some years before when she left to go to college to have something like a safe word so that her mom could call the cops and save her. I actually think that's a great idea for people who have that kind of lifeline. That is a great idea, but imagine if that person is just not on point, doesn't remember the phrase or like what the topic is that you're supposed to say if you're in trouble, and they're just like, okay, why are you talking about this stuff? What? That'd be awkward, to say the least. I'm way too late to the game here, but that's all right. My grandfather graduated high school at 14 and started med school at 16. When he went on his first date with my grandmother while he was 16 and my grandmother was 14, he had to wait downstairs with her father as she finished getting ready. So my great-grandfather starts asking him all sorts of questions. Mainly, what does he do with his time? So my grandpa gives him the rundown. "Well, I'm 16, I'm captain of the basketball team, I'm in med school right now, sir." My great-grandfather told him that he wouldn't have his 14-year-old daughter date a liar since there was no way he was 16 and in med school and the captain of the basketball team. He thought he was either lying about his age or lying about being in med school to impress him, so he kicked my grandpa out. My grandpa's mom had to call my grandma's dad to verify his story before my great-grandfather would let him come back to the house to take my grandma. Not me, but my oldest sister, then 19, asked if she could bring her boyfriend of a few months to my dad's 45th birthday meal. They said yes, and we were all excited to meet him. They were both over 30 minutes late, and the guy turned out to be a kid my dad was neighbors with and used to play with as a child. He spent the rest of the meal making jokes about how they knew each other as kids, and now he was boning his kid, and that they'd know the entire time about the connection and not bothered to give us any prior warning because they thought it would be funnier for my dad to find out this way. No idea how my dad managed to keep his cool. Some people just have zero class whatsoever. Not really on topic, but this is one for the parents who make snap judgments about kids' choices of who
they date? This all started when I was 18. I'm now 30. I just graduated EMT training and was out with some friends celebrating, and this beautiful girl that had been in the nursing program at our school started chatting me up. I had spoken to her a few times at school, mostly hi, how are you, etc. Well, we ended up going on a few dates, mostly just dinners and movies, the usual, and she asks if I want to come with her to her family cookout. Well, obviously, I said sure, why not, and went to meet her family. I'll pause here to add that at the time, I was 329 pounds, so not a small guy, and I'm 6'5". However, I had also lost almost 100 pounds before going to school with her, which she did not know at this point. I fought a thyroid disorder all through middle and high school and worked my butt off to get my weight under control and find the right medication so I wasn't just a fat lazy bum as some might call me. I knew from some of our conversations that this girl was really into physical fitness and the like. I told her that I was going to the gym and trying to lose at least 100 pounds, and she seemed encouraging and offered to even go with me. Well, the weekend cookout comes along and I meet the parents. We get there and everyone's outside cooking out and enjoying the pool, etc. I've never had body image issues or problems with my man boobs, so I take off my shirt and join in after meeting the parents and having what I thought was a good first talk. I notice while I'm sitting talking to one of her relatives, I think it was her uncle, that she's giving me these weird looks. Well, about an hour later I ask someone where the bathroom is, and when walking in the house to find it, I overhear this girl and her father talking in the kitchen. I'm not usually one to spy on someone, but I couldn't help myself. I figured the dad was telling her I wasn't good for her or something. I was right on both accounts. What I heard was, I didn't spend my life working hard and sending you to private school and buying you anything you desired so you could end up with some fat slob piece of crap like that out there. He has zero respect for himself. How can you expect him to respect you? Well, I was a little annoyed at this point, so I figured I'd back out and leave and call her later and see how she wanted to handle this, if we needed to call it quits or what. Before I could turn around though, I hear her reply, I only brought him home to make you and mom mad. I find him disgusting, but it's worth it to let you know you can't tell me what to do. Yeah, at this point, I'm really angry. Upon hearing this, I walk into the kitchen and let my feelings be known. I informed her dad that yes, I'm fat, but that I was 430 pounds just a year and a half ago, and still losing weight, and sorry I wasn't born with perfect genes that made me fit and perfect in his eyes. But as he stated, he worked hard to provide for his daughter. I worked damn hard to overcome my challenges and will continue to work on them. After that, I turned to the daughter and said I was glad I could be her token fat guy for the day, and if she'd pack me a few racks of ribs, I'd take my fat, happy butt home. Fast forward about 12 years and I had gone back to school and graduated with my paramedic certs. I'm at this time about 230 pounds. I'm still a big dude, but a lot of it's muscle now, and I just have a large frame to begin with. Well, I was on the ambulance and received a call for a patient in cardiac arrest. Went en route, hit the lights, and hauled butt to the call. Upon arriving to the scene, we are directed to the patient, and I honestly stopped dead in my tracks as I came round the corner and realized the patient was the girl's dad. After about a 2-second, well, doesn't life work in mysterious ways, pause, I immediately began intubating him, and my partner got our monitor set up while a fire crew member takes over compression. We work him for about 3 or so minutes on scene and decide to move him to the truck. Once loaded and en route to the ER, I continued working on him in the box. After about another 4 minutes, I finally got a shockable rhythm and proceed to try and jumpstart his heart. Takes about 4 rounds, but finally get his heart in a normal sinus rhythm and get him to the ER. I turned him over to the docs and went back in service, just thinking about how much of a female dog karma was that Mr. Fit had a heart attack when I was the fat slob piece of crap, and how ironic it was that I'd be the one to respond to that call. Well, about a week later, I get a call from the hospital that a patient I brought in wants to thank me. After learning it was this gentleman, and he donates a large sum of money to the hospital, and getting the PR speech from the suits at the hospital, I'm thinking this is going to end bad. I made my way over to the hospital after a shift, and when I got to his room, I realized when I walk in he has zero memory of me. Not surprising since it was so long ago, but I have also changed a lot physically. He thanks me, I do the usual, it's just my job speech, etc. Well, I was thinking, cool, got past this, no drama, it's over, all good, not so fast. He proceeds to tell me it's frustrating that even guys like us in good physical shape that take care of themselves can still have heart attacks while there's people out there that eat anything they want, weigh God knows what, and still walk around with luck. That really ticked me off, but I held it for a while and said, yeah, but that's just the way life is, and try to work my way out of there. Just as I'm about to cut and run, it hits me. What can I say without being a total butt and really ticking off the doctors outside. As I'm walking out, I tell him, glad I could help him out, and it's not bad work for a guy who used to be a fat slob piece of crap. I turned around and walked out, but I noticed that little light of recognition in his eyes as I left. That was about 6 months ago, and I've received several messages from him since then wanting to meet and talk, but I've ignored them, as I really have no desire to hear what he has to say. At best, it's an apology for how he acted back then. At worst, he'll try and take me to task for being a butt to him, and I'm good without it either way. Moral, I guess, is always treat others how you want to be treated, as someday you may need them, or something like that. Words to live by, but you also can't hold on to crap that people have said to you over the years, because yeah, while it might be good if maybe you do get revenge or an opportunity to prove yourself to that person and show them that they were wrong about you, sure, that's good. But if you let it fester and you're thinking on these things that happened like years and years ago, like all the time, it can twist you up inside, no joke. My ex-boyfriend dropped a bag of booger sugar on the floor. He told my dad it was sugar because he was diabetic. My dad promptly told him to leave and never come back. That was the nice way I put it. He was not that nice. My mom didn't say a word, not the best time to say, "But Daddy, I love him," on my part, and then he asked me if I was on the booger sugar too. Not a parent, but my girlfriend met my mother last year for the first time. After my mother had a long discussion with us about the seriousness of texting and driving due to some news program she watched, my mom just drops the serious talk and starts casual conversation with her. First thing she asks is, "Do you have any siblings?" To which my girlfriend responded, "I had a sister, but she died in a car crash." Now, this was a complete joke, but my mom is not the humorous type. I literally cringed so hard. Not gonna lie, sounds like your girlfriend had a pretty good sense of humor. Started seeing who is now my ex-wife when after about a month and a half of dating, we got pregnant with our daughter. Met her and her parents at a restaurant for dinner to tell them that she was pregnant and what our plans would be going forward. Her father looks at me and the first thing he said was, "Darling 74, why did you have sex with my daughter?" Mind you, she was 21 at the time and I was 24. After a few seconds, I replied, "She took off her shirt and asked me if I was going to do her or not. So I did." Followed by me immediately getting up and walking right out of the restaurant. Me, my ex-girlfriend, and her sister's friend were sitting outside on the back step getting ready to smoke the devil's lettuce. Her dad had recently left for a couple of weeks, and before he left, he said to me, "Don't do anything that you wouldn't do if I was around," and told him I would behave. Anyways, we're outside and her mom was at work, or so we thought. So I take the bowl and smoke, and her sister's friend goes, "Ah, crap." I turn around and there is my ex's mom staring at me with eyes of fury. As a punishment, she made me and my ex-girlfriend watch Pinocchio, and she grounded her for like a month. Anyone else heard that Snoop Dogg's apparently quit smoking the devil's lettuce? I'm waiting for that to be some kind of campaign for some new product or something that he's making, I don't know. During my angsty phase, I brought home a guy with a safety pin through his eyebrow and a foot-tall blue mohawk. Within 5 minutes of entering my household, he managed to insult my mother's interior decorating skills and shoot my little sister in the eye point blank with a Nerf gun. We left before he could even meet my father, who would surely have ended up in prison for whatever he did to the dude. Happened to a uni mate. He went to pick up his girlfriend from the parents. They had been dating for a few weeks, and this was their first time meeting. Her house was on a reasonable hill, and while parking, he rolled back into the dad's car. So in his first few sentences to the parents, he had to explain that he had damaged their car, apologize, and then convince them to let their daughter get in his car to go to a movie. They let her go, and it became a running joke with the family. My family is very chill. Poop is discussed while eating and such. With this in mind, my 16-year-old brother brought home a fairly good-looking girl, tall, smiled a lot, outgoing, older. One of the first conversations we all have together after they go to his room to fool around is how they met 2 days before off of Tinder and only got together so that they could fool around for the summer before she left for college. Then proceeded to ask my mom to provide her with birth control as her mother would not. That happened. Talk about inappropriate dinner conversation. Also, there is a startling amount of people that aren't parents talking about this stuff. It's all just kids talking about how their dates disappointed their parents. In my early 20s, after getting kicked out of college, I lived with my parents. The way their house is set up is a big staircase down, basically, in the middle of the house, which is almost completely open. There are no hallways in the house. Anyways, at the bottom of the staircase is the kitchen with an opening from where the sink is. Well, my mom has some weird sixth sense when she knows I have a girl over, and it is never the same one. This would typically happen on weekends. My mom would be washing dishes
dishes and yelling my name saying, "Come down for breakfast." Only problem is there's a random girl in my room. 90% of the time the chick would freak the hell out and be like, "Holy crap, how am I going to get out of here without meeting this woman?" My mom doesn't care one bit. In fact, she invited them to join us for breakfast. Sometimes I'd walk the girl down and say, "Hey, this is blah, blah, blah," but sometimes I'd send them down by themselves and they'd just dart out of the front door. God damn, those moments were frickin' priceless. My 17-year-old daughter had been talking to a friend of a friend on Facebook. He was supposedly in the army, just finished basic, and was at a base in Texas. One Friday night, he showed up at our house. We live in Missouri. He flew in to surprise her. She was surprised. I was mad. Asked him how long he was in town, where he was trying to stay. The punk kid used all of his money to buy his one-way plane ticket and take a cab to our house. I ended up driving this kid back to the airport, buying a plane ticket for him, and sending him back on his merry way. Turns out, he thought he would just not go back to his base and live at our house until my daughter finished high school. Yeah, not happening. She is 25 now, and we were just laughing about this last week when she and her husband were having dinner with us. That was one crazy, scary guy.
Yeah, I got a hard agree there. That sounds like a kind of terrifying event to happen in your life, some random dude showing up. Especially some weirdo that's just been casually chatting with your daughter for I don't know how many months.
My girlfriend, now wife, met my parents for the first time at my dad's surprise 60th. In her nervousness, she proceeds to get plastered and is repeatedly shushed by my mother during speeches for laughing too loud and long with my mom's friends. The next morning, she's hating life as she comes downstairs for breakfast. My older brother, who has the maturity of a 13-year-old boy, sees her in distress and proceeds to wave a platter of eggs and bacon under her nose. As she bolts for the bathroom, my mom, who has a long career in addiction fields, pulls me into the hallway and asks me, "Does she do this a lot?" A less than auspicious entry into my family. First time I met my ex's dad, we were sitting in front of the TV. Me, him, her, and her two younger sisters, and we were watching Hannah Montana. Just for the record, he turned to me and asked, "Are you sleeping with my daughter?" I replied awkwardly, I'm not sure, We totally were. Turned towards my ex and asked, Are we sleeping together?" She casually answered, not taking her eyes off of the TV, "Yes, Daddy, we're sleeping together." Direct. Confident, I presume. All good traits. What happened?
Escape room employees. What was the weirdest escape tactic you've seen? I've learned not to make the final stage a lock with a key because damn if I haven't met some of the best lockpicks in the state. My family did an escape room and there was a room with a phone that connected to 3 other rooms. The door only opened when you dialed the right numbers on the phone, and so my sister just walked up and pressed redial and the last door opened. We have the record of 7.5 minutes to complete the room. My brother and I once got out of a room by taking a magnet from the previous puzzle and using it to lift a key out of a small opening in a lockbox. There were 6 of us and nobody could figure out the last clue, so we improvised. Got out with 3 minutes to spare. Pretty good, kid. I was told this by an employee. There were paper clips to unlock handcuffs. Someone stuck it into a functioning outlet. I don't think that guy was trying to speed run the escape room. Not an employee, but did a room with 2 friends where we got randomly placed with a family with 3 kids under the age of 12. The youngest was maybe 7. We were like, oh man, we're not going to get any help at all. Kids won't be able to solve anything, and their parents will have to keep track of them. But there was this one part where you had to solve a puzzle that would allow you to move a bookshelf on treads. There was a small gap through which you could see the key, but it was too small to get more than a few fingers through. Unless you're a small 7-year-old boy. He just popped his arm in there and grabbed the key. We bypassed a good 5 minutes of the room that way. Also, the kids ended up being delightful and pretty good at finding stuff. There was a group of people who were doing a space-themed escape room. In one of the rooms there was an astronaut suit, which was supposed to just serve as a prop, but one of the members thought that it might be needed to solve one of the rooms. So he ended up traversing through the entire escape room while wearing an astronaut suit. And no, it wasn't needed to solve anything. No joke, this is actually making me want to try an escape room. We had a room where you were supposed to translate this code into different words. We had a list of possible words, and then put them into a specific order. We weren't positive how to use the code translator. It was something with wheels, so instead we just used some common sense, like XCWWB is obviously going to be green, not purple. But the lock that was supposed to pop open when you got it right had already popped when we got in, so nothing happened. We asked for a clue and she made us use the actual code wheel because she assumed there was no way we could have gotten the words right without it. I worked at an escape room for about a year, but one group managed to always stay in my mind. It was a group of 4 women, maybe in their 50s, drunk out of their minds. They started off the room quite well with a pace that would allow them to escape, but then they encountered what we considered to be the easiest puzzle in the room. Basically, they get a long magnet and use it to pull a key out of a locked window. However, they, for some god-unknown reason, could not figure this out. After a bit of trying, they asked for a clue. I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, "Remember that magnet stick you guys got? Some might call it the key to success." Simultaneously, they all sigh, which is a common reaction when people realize that an answer to a puzzle was so simple, but no, they didn't understand the clue. Instead, they shoved the book into the window in hopes of getting the key, which is something we specifically tell them not to do. Had to end up pulling them from the room as they started ripping apart the books. At a certain point, I am just sat here wondering, how much worse could I be than some of these people at these escape rooms? Working at an escape room, I have a lot of stories, but this one will forever be my favorite. It happened a little over a year ago now. A guy was wearing a baseball cap when he went into the room, and shortly after took it off and placed it somewhere. About 7 to 10 minutes later, he picked it up and started searching it for clues or hidden messages. His wife needed to remind him that was his own hat, and it actually took some convincing. He really didn't believe her at first. I work at an escape room in Sweden, and we use live actors in our games. One time when one of my colleagues entered in character, a group of people decided to grab him and tickle him so that he would let them out, because they thought that was a great tactic. Worst part is that when they got out the normal way, they were very proud of their actions and thought they were really funny. I abhor being tickled, so much, so I have a lot of sympathy for that worker. I'd be so angry too, you're just trying to do your job and a bunch of people start tickling you. Surely there are rules and regulations to these things. It's hey, don't bother the actors that we have working at this place, please. Our rooms had a lot of decorative touches, lots of pretty knickknacks just to enhance the mood. One of our rooms had a Victorian parlor, smoking room feel, and on the mantle was a small statue of a bird of some sort. One gentleman decided to pick up and carry the eagle for about 45 minutes. "But guys, this eagle has to be for something." He tried placing it on things, opening it, using it as a key. Thank goodness he didn't try to use it to bang something open. When the group finally escaped, he was at the door and quickly asked me, "What was the eagle for?" "Oh, nothing. It's just for a decoration." He had done absolutely nothing to help his group progress. So he walks over and sets the statue down and lets out a heavy sigh. He seemed absolutely crushed. Meanwhile, the rest of his group was partying and celebrating their success. I get that. That is the worry, that you go to one of these things with a bunch of friends and no matter what you do, how hard you try, you end up contributing nothing to the team. That would be awful. I feel for this dude. I have tons of stories about destructive players, so instead, how about a weird and actually intelligent method? After my brief and video, the players started to run around the room, all talking out loud, not necessarily talking to each other. I thought that there was no way they were going to escape with how disorganized they were. Boy, was I wrong. One of the group members shouts, "Pumpernickel," and everyone else shuts up immediately. They continued to play like this through the rest of the game. Whenever one of them had either found something interesting or figured out an answer, they would shout, "Pumpernickel," and immediately everyone else would give them their full attention. They got out in 30 minutes and 0 clues in a room with a 20% success rate, and average time to complete is 45 to 50 minutes. Definitely one of the better groups I've managed or seen. I worked on one where a roulette table was one of the answers. Now, we didn't want to rig a roulette wheel, so we gave the lock multiple answers. Now, this family comes through and plays it and gets double zeros, and they assume it's rigged to land on double zeros. Pretty common assumption. They spin it again, lands on double zeros again. I worked there for about a year, and I don't think I'll ever see something like that again. The family didn't make it out of the room, but they were extremely close. I had a friend who ran an escape room in an older house. She said she had a group that snuck in tools and disassembled the furniture looking for clues, namely a metal child's bed and rocker. She had another group that peeled off a layer of wallpaper and punched a hole through the drywall. I also went through through with a friend who tore a stuffed animal in half to remove it from a locked box instead of finding the key. Hearing about these, I wish they would do crazy stuff like that. Like, let's insert a key in a teddy bear or something like that. That'd be cool, I guess. I mean, you gotta consider that you can't go around breaking all this crap, right? An employee told us this story. The room we went to was part of an older building, and there was an unused fireplace. A previous lady had opened the chimney flue, letting a dead bird, among other things, into the room. This lady thought the dead bird was part of the escape, and the employees had to inform her that it wasn't. I've built 2 escape rooms which we ran at conferences and events, guaranteed occurrences. 1. Someone rips something apart due to overenthusiasm. 2. Someone rips something apart because they came in drunk. 3. The meekest, quietest person in the group figures a puzzle out 20 minutes before everyone else and nobody is listening to them. 4. The smartest people never figure anything out. Hot tip, if you're going to be in an escape room, pretend you're dumb as poop. We never require you know advanced chemistry or have an IT background. All the pieces are in the room. If your first few guesses on a puzzle aren't it, don't sit there beating your brain on it. Hand it to fresh eyes. 5. Someone does the opposite of what the warning label says. If it's shaped like a laser pointer and has a giant do not point at eyes, guess where it's immediately going. 6. Since we show at conferences and take over other spaces, we don't have 100% control of this space. We will hang black curtains over things or put a label on something that says not part of the puzzle, and people still, with almost every run through, find something new. Like there was a label on an AC vent high on the ceiling and somebody spent half an hour going, what does it mean? 7. Someone figures a puzzle out that spells out a clue, notices the clue, then disassembles it and forgets it. This behavior I do not understand. We had one puzzle where people had to connect strings to a point on a grid, and when all the strings were up, it spelled a 3-letter word. Groups would do this, notice the word, comment on it, then take all the strings off the wall. Then 10 minutes later, be going, this lock needs 3 letters to open it, and I'm screaming from the security camera room. 8. I built a puzzle that has a 30-second timer. If you don't solve the whole thing in that time frame, it resets. Once you know what to do, it's just button pushing. It's easy, but holy Christ, having a short time limit stresses some people out like crazy. Like screaming, it's gonna reset, oh God, at their teammates. That's just people getting real into the game. I mean, hell, me and my mates yell at each other when we play Mario Kart. We curse each other's names, but pretty sure that's typical of a regular Mario Kart game. Emotions get pretty high. Work in an escape room and we have a prison scenario. Shocker, I know. Set in the 1960s in Germany. Made to look authentically old, there is an old rusty toilet, obviously without water. Via the cameras, I could only see the back of the dude appearing to investigate the water tank above the toilet, only he wasn't. You might already guess where we're heading. This dude thought it was perfectly appropriate to wee into a prop toilet in a confined space. With 3 friends present in the same room, I lost my crap and had to throw the group out. There was a drawer that would activate a black light when you pulled it open. Group was pretty dumb and clueless, gave them a hint. You'll find something useful if you open a certain drawer. Naturally, they find the drawer and someone decides that it would be useful to grab the light bulb and rip it out of its socket. Entire room blacked out cause they tripped the fuse. Needless to say, they did not escape. In a clown-themed escape room with my friends, we found a coin which we found out was used later on in the room. There was a hole in the floor with a note that said, do not put the coin in this hole. We thought it was a trick or something, so we put the coin in there, only for nothing to happen, and we couldn't get the coin out. With all the notes and warnings that employees apparently put around the place, or have to say because otherwise people trash the rooms apparently, this doesn't sound quite as fun as I imagined. Former employee here. We always reminded our guests to be gentle and respectful inside our games. That force of any kind is entirely unnecessary. People have ripped handcuffs from tables and walls, used incredible force to rip open maglocked doors, somehow used a key from their own keychain to unlock a cupboard that is not meant to be unlocked at all. There is a phone in one of the games that cannot make any outgoing calls except to 911. There is a note on the phone asking people not to call 911, and we reminded our guests not to call 911, but it constantly happened. It was rare when it happened, but some kind of parallel thinking that led them to getting the right answer without any of the clues. It's pretty alarming when a door opens and it required a clue in another locked box. In the escape room I work at, I once had a party of older 20-somethings come in during a day out. They didn't pay much attention. I think some of them might have been a bit drunk, but I'm not sure, but they worked at a pretty good pace. In the room they were doing, they had to find a crank, a gear, and a handle in order to open a mechanical box that had the answer to the mystery they were trying to solve. We weren't allowed to lock the door for safety reasons, so before they even step in the room, I gave them a whole spiel about the rules and whatnot, and told them that anything that looks like it needs more parts to work probably does, so please don't force things. This box clearly has a part for the gear, and a part for the crank to attach to said gear on the side of the box. After finding the gear and handle, but having not found the crank yet, one of the dudes in the room just attaches the gear and with sheer force of his grip turns it without the crank and opens the box. I was just staring at the monitor open-mouthed in awe. I haven't seen anything before or after that could possibly top that experience. They ended up deciding to continue the room and try to find the crank after I informed them what happened, and they'd technically solved the room and had a blast. This is our extended list at work, basically meaning that people have done this crap at our venue, and now we have to brief everyone with this list. Ceiling tiles and sprinklers are not part of the game. Do not kick holes in our walls. We do not keep clues in the plaster. Do not pull apart our phone. It is there for clues from the staff. It is not a clue itself. Climbing on top of our shelving and jumping onto a lockbox to break it open is not how you solve a puzzle. Kicking doors down is not permitted in gameplay. You are not Arnold Schwarzenegger. Do not place metal items in the power outlets. They are live and will kill you. These are the types of people who look at us with surprise on their faces when we have to repeat they are liable for the damages they make. I'm starting to wonder if some of these contestants got confused between an escape room with a rage room, I think they're called. You can just go in there and break whatever's in there with whatever you like. It's supposed to be really good for an anger outlet. Last week, a woman ripped a very large painting out of the wall. It was clearly marked "Do Not Touch" and screwed into the wall with anchors. One part of our game requires you to look up information in a textbook. We give the page number to help solve a puzzle. I've had 2 groups now waste 5 to 10 minutes solving the practice problem instead. Didn't know you could pick combination locks until a guy did it. If there is any kind of lock anywhere in an escape room, I can guarantee someone has tried to pick it. Drunk people in particular get pretty creative, usually not in ways that are beneficial to them. At least once a week we have someone ask if they can just make their way through the drywall. I know it's a joke, but I always keep a closer eye on those people. But we have our customers lock up their belongings in lockers prior to entering the rooms. It's important to note that the lockers are not assigned per room. Any player can pick any locker. The other day I had a group open up a locker cabinet which has the means to escape in it within the first 2 minutes in the room, and escaped right away. When I asked them how they escaped, fearing that we forgot to lock it during the reset, they let me know that they used their locker key to open it. Needless to say, we got new locks for our lockers. God, my boyfriend works in an escape room, and they tell you at the beginning, if you have to use force, then it's not meant to move. Then people literally rip lights, bookshelves, clocks, skeletons that were drilled into the walls right off. I think they spend close to a few $1,000s a month repairing crap they told customers not to do. That sounds ludicrously frustrating if you were the business owner of that establishment. I had one team shut the magnetic secret door behind them, locking themselves in for no reason that was particularly dumb. In one of our rooms, there's an opening in the wall for a long tube that they're supposed to stick a magnet into and fish out a key. One team decided to drop the cryptex they were trying to open into it instead. That was fun to try and get out. One team of the 2 got to the end of the hour time limit without even solving the first puzzle. In another room, we have a mannequin hanging from a noose. My coworker watched one particular idiot put the noose around his own neck and climb onto the bench next to it. He got a real shouting at over the walkie-talkie for that moronic stunt. This job sounds like, the second most infuriating jobs after maybe working in the stock market. A group came into this place and I went through everything. I was the only employee who was fluent in English, so I'd go through the rules. The rest of the staff are Russian and mostly speak Russian. Only one knows broken English, so she'd relay stuff to me if needed. Well, one day, as I said, this group came in. My boss and her friend, who were visiting, were discussing in high-speed Russian different parts of the escape room, how to get in and out and such. I assume no one can hear or understand them, so I go through the rules and such. I mention I'm also on a loudspeaker and such if they need help. The second they get in the first room, a guy goes, "You guys remember how I speak Russian? Want to set a record? I can hear you." Niet! Not necessarily an escape tactic, but when telling the group the rules and what to do, i.e. don't go in the ceiling, they almost always think you're just trying to misdirect them. Please do not, under any circumstances, mess with the fire detection and alarm system. Somehow translates to, there is definitely something hiding in the functioning smoke detector. They were not happy with the bill for the fire department getting called after they ripped it out of the ceiling. If I go to an escape room and ever do something this stupid, I'm probably going to come back on here and be like, well, I did it. I fell victim to my own stupidity and I paid for it. All of my judgments of other people in this specific topic were unfounded and, well, I was no better. There was one person who ripped the wires out of a pressure sensor, then stuck said wires into an electrical outlet, shorted out the room, and no, they did not get out. In his defense, he knew a lot about electricity. In high school, I used to work in an escape room for my co-op. I usually just watched cameras and swept up the room after everyone was done. In our medieval room, there is a ventilation hatch really high up on the ceiling. It's really out of sight, but if you're looking for it, you can find it. I've witnessed 6 full-grown guys form a human ladder to try and open the hatch with a bobby pin they found on the floor because they thought it was part of the room. I had to send in my colleague before any of them got hurt, though. "Hey guys, I've got an idea of how we can escape this medieval-themed escape room. See that modern-day ventilation shaft up there? I bet that's the way we get out." Worked at an escape room while I was between jobs. We had a room that had a long vase glued to a table with a key at the bottom. There was a stick magnet located in the room, but one of the first things people usually found was the other magnets utilized in another part of the room. This person took off a shoe, completely pulled the laces out, and tied it to the small magnet to stick down the long vase. Creative, but completely unnecessary. Plus, then it was super confusing when they did eventually find the long magnet stick. I guess that's the issue with these things. People find stuff, get so excited that they found a clue or potential answer for how to get out of the place, and they want to use it immediately. So then they're like, wait a minute, but it doesn't quite work. Maybe they expect us to use our brains even more and think outside of the box. Like, I understand that. It's kind of like, I know, going on a tangent, but it's like when I first played Dark Souls. I went straight to the graveyard, tried to go all the way into the catacombs, was just like, this is the way I need to go. Of course it is, because the game's supposed to be super freaking hard. And then I took another look around and found the stairway to the Undead Burg, and it was way easier, and I was like, oh, well, now I just feel silly. You know, there's the expectation of what you know about something vaguely, and then there's the reality of the matter. Escape room employee here. I have witnessed a few of these, but most have been told to me by co-workers. Picking a lock with a girl's bobby pin. We provide a key. Thought they had played the room before and were cheating, prying a threaded bolt off the wall with their bare hands, shouting the answer into the camera, the game mic, or writing it on paper provided and blocking our camera with it, instead of, you know, doing the puzzle in real life. We cannot physically lock our rooms due to fire code, so people try to leave the room and come back with power tools we have in our lobby from room construction and maintenance. There's a 7 to 8 foot armoire in one room. We've had to get people off the top from it before, and this is again after telling them repeatedly that everything they need to interact with is eye level or lower. Writing on the clues we slide under the door and asking questions, and most stupidly, sticking metal objects into power outlets. Those of you who don't have a degree and love your job, what do? I walk dogs. Everyone at work is always super stoked to see me, and I never go home angry. Already a strong start. I drive a school bus, and my elementary school kids are my favorite part of the day. I make $14 an hour and work 2.5 hours at a time and get paid for 6 hours a day unless I do a field trip or something. And most of the time, those are fun as hell. I get to go to the zoo, the science center. I went to a Cardinals game. I went to a swimming competition and got to stay in a nice hotel for a weekend getting paid the entire time. The only thing I would change about my job are the buttholes I have to share the road with. I'm a web developer. I dropped out of college to move home and take care of my mom. Motorcycle accident, permanent severe brain damage. I couldn't leave home. I had to be with my mom, so I did what I used to do for fun. PHP. I hated PHP though, so I researched what the most semantic and elegant solution to web development was. The research led me to develop with Python and Django. I made a website, Good Guy Gamers, that wasn't successful at all. It was way too
too much work for one person. I'm a terrible designer and marketer, but I put everything I had into making the site have cool, unique features and demonstrate my skill. It worked. I landed a job where I work near full-time for a great company for $40 an hour, and I have a huge say in what happens. I can work for 3 hours a day if I'm feeling awful or can't focus for some reason, or I can work 12 hours a day busting my butt on an exciting problem. The main point is, I found what I'm passionate about, and I found a company that truly appreciates what I can do. Further, they appreciate what I could become with more experience. Great rule when looking for a job: look for a place with upward momentum and a workplace that actively wants to see you improve. I'm an educator at a small zoo. Not very common in the zoo community to work without a degree, but I was lucky to be grandfathered in. I started as a temporary worker, went to full-time animal care, and worked my way up to lead keeper. Education was a normal part of my keeper job anyway, so I jumped at the chance to do that full-time. I'm at the 1-year mark now, and I'm crazy about it. Teaching people about wildlife and habitat conservation while handling awesome animals is very rewarding. That does sound pretty cool. Construction. Winters are tough, but fresh air is a blessing.
Bartender, the parties, the stories, and the money to be made.
I'm a professional farrier. I've only been at it a few months, went to farrier school straight out of high school, but I love it, and I wouldn't change a thing. Though a lot of people are surprised when an 18-year-old girl shows up and manhandles their stubborn stallions and nags. I'd heard the name farrier, but I didn't know what it was until I just read this. I'm an air traffic controller, 23 years old, and at any given moment I have hundreds of human beings on my screen. For the most part, pilots do their thing and we do ours. While I wish to pursue a business degree, I'm not sure I would trade this job for anything. Excellent income, excellent benefits, and the fact that every day is slightly different than the last is pretty cool. I feel like I'm gonna see some kind of bot story or something at some point where it's like, do this, join this, we need you. Kennel attendant for the cat building of a no-kill shelter. Every shift starts at 7 a.m. Depending on the shift, I scrub vomit, clean dusty litter paw prints off everything, clean cage units, change out bedding, dump hundreds of pounds of dirty cat litter, and lug hundreds of pounds of clean bagged litter, scrub 50-some dirty litter boxes. It's by far the most physical labor-intensive job I've ever had, and by far my favorite job I've ever had. I'm part-time, the pay is not enough to support myself, but by God, I love it. For reference, I'm 25, 1 year of community college, and 1 year of awful degree mill art school under my belt. I live in a fantasy world where how successful I see myself is dependent on how happy I am. I'm looking for a second part-time job and also procrastinating getting serious about a sketch pet portrait business. I'm a pretty simple girl who loves animals and wants to make a positive difference in the world. I wish you luck, I support you, but I will remain steadfastly pessimistic. I kid. Of course. Honestly, I enjoy the outlook on this young woman. I think it's good to feel like needed, wanted, or feel like you're at your station in life, what you're meant to be doing, or at least something that makes you happy, and that's all that really matters, I'm a 911 dispatcher. High school diploma is all that is required. I actually do have a degree in women's studies, but it in no way helped me get the job. The thing that got me the job was customer service experience. I worked at an answering service for 2 years before this. My job is fantastic. I work 12-hour shifts and only work 15 days a month. 1 week I work Monday to Tuesday, then Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays. The next week I only work Wednesday and Thursday. I get a 3-day weekend every other week. The work is interesting, but there's also loads of downtime in which we're allowed to browse the internet or read. There's no dress code, although pajamas are gently discouraged. Most importantly, you really do get to help people, so you leave at the end of your shift feeling like you've done something good for your community. It's fantastic. I work as a bus driver for people with disabilities. I love what I do because I feel like I'm giving back a little part of life these people had taken from them for whatever reason. It is very fulfilling. I love my clients. Mostly. I actually know quite a few people who worked with disabled people. Obviously I've heard good sides of it, and then I've heard absolute horror stories about the people who do not behave very well and some messed up stuff. I'm a welder or fabricator. It's almost always a one-man operation in my shop, which is good for me as a total introvert. I only get help moving and installing the really heavy pieces. I get to make custom steel pieces for custom houses. It feels great when the homeowner says I built all their favorite parts of their house. Mostly handrails, furniture, doors, stairs, and all little odds and ends a modern house needs. I also get to do a little woodworking when it's needed.
I'm a compliance analyst for a health insurance company. I started out as a clerk for my department and worked my way up to where I am now within 2 years. So now I'm responsible for making sure we're following federal regulations and perform audits on the work we do in addition to assisting my manager with changes that need to take place. It's an amazing job. I love the company and my manager, and I'm lucky to know that I'm still not done moving up within the company with the growth we're experiencing. I'm a taxidermist. I love my job. It takes my 2 favorite classes from high school and smushed them together, biology and art. I also find taxidermy morbidly fascinating. I mean, has anyone ever seen that thing where it's I think a guy tried to taxidermy a lion but had never seen a lion before, so he had the skin and everything, and instead of making it look like a lion, it looked like one of those really bad paintings of what people thought a lion looked like by second-hand descriptions. If you haven't seen it, type in bad taxidermy lion, it looks ridiculous. But then look up medieval lion painting and you will know the one. I roughneck on a drilling rig, make great money, $2,500 a week, and I work only 2 weeks a month and 6 months out of the year. Practically buy whatever I want, whenever I want. There's a lot of fights between the men out here, but if you can get past that and do your job right, you're pretty much your own man out here. I myself have considered working on an oil rig at one time or another when things get stressful. I'm I hate it here, but I also need to make money. Senior network penetration tester and security researcher. I've wanted to do this stuff since I was 10 and tinkered with everything since then. Paycheck or not, I love it. I get to travel all over, hack into Fortune 500s and not get in trouble, not that they usually catch me, and meet some amazing people. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Musician. I perform and record my own songs with some of my best friends in the world, and sometimes these crazy high schools pay me to arrange crappy pop music into fun choral pop music for their show choirs. I'd live in a box to keep doing this if needed. I work at Disney World, and although there are good and bad days, there is nothing that compares to the environment. You meet some amazing people and see some crazy things. For every one negative experience, there are 1,000 positive experiences. You can work your way up, or you can stay where you love working. They give you a lot of chances to improve after making a mistake and opportunities to further yourself. There will always be people who can only see the negatives, but they don't really understand that the magic is making someone else's day, even if it means sacrificing your own. Sounds like a bunch of propaganda to me. I'm joking. I actually went to Disneyland a while ago and I had a blast. Everyone was really lovely. The immersion, that Disney magic, I totally felt it. I had a great time. A little late to the conversation, but I work at a dog boarding facility that has it all. Grooming, daycare, boarding, obviously, self-service baths, fostering and rescue and adoption, the whole shebang. It's really fun to work with all of the different personalities and breeds of dogs, and can also be challenging learning how to work around behavior, trust issues that some of them come in with. It can be tiring, though the 4-hour shifts I work here leave me way more tired than the 8-hour shifts I used to work in retail. But in the end, it is totally worth being with dogs all day. The only issue I have with where I work are some of my co-workers, but thankfully management has a good head on their shoulders. Otherwise, I love where I work and I hope to put in many more years. No qualifications, professional musician for 30 years. Wouldn't trade the worst year of being a pro muso for anything else. I love it that much. I have 0 job security, no benefits apart from free alcohol, late nights, and sometimes recording sessions are booked early the following day. Long time away from home, traveling all the time, still wouldn't be doing anything else. That is the issue with not working for an almighty corporation or just being self-employed in general. You don't really know where your next paycheck's going to be coming from. I'm a personal shopper. I literally walk around a store all day collecting groceries to be delivered to people who are too rich and busy to do their own shopping. It's a pretty sweet gig, and being able to see how the other half lives makes me feel happy that I'm not a rich douche and reassures me that my financial priorities are intact. You didn't have time to buy a $2 loaf of bread and are going to pay $20 to have it delivered to your door? Really? I'm an event manager for an energy company in Texas. I get to tell people what to do, manage a $500,000 budget, and travel some. No degree. Experience matters most. Make $60K a year and earn almost twice what my wife with a master's makes. Pizza delivery driver. Make great tips and get to jam to music while on the way to deliveries, and also everyone at work, even the managers, smoke tons of devil's lettuce. I work in the retention department for a cable company. I take 30 to 40 calls a day from people calling to cancel their cable. I usually take them out of it. I often slash their bills. I sometimes give them something for free. And every once in a while, they really do cancel. Every time they're mad or unhappy when the call starts, and every time at the end of the call, they're satisfied. It isn't a very easy job, but it is one that pays me pretty well. And I get free cable. I think that South Park episode has ruined me, the one where like the cable people or like the TV people are just like, oh, you want to cancel your package? Really? I play video games for a living. More specifically, I live stream via Redacted so people can see what I play as I do my best to entertain them. My fans make it the best job in the world. I checked out the link to their Twitch channel and they were taken off apparently for violations, but as far as I know about Twitch, it's very easy to get kicked off Twitch. Unless, of course, you're one of the golden boys or chosen ones that they decide can get away with whatever they want. Digital compositing in an animation studio. There's deadlines, sure, and it can get pretty stressful, but I love it. VP of operations for a steel foundry. I started working at the foundry my dad worked at out of high school just to make some money and never left the industry. I've spent the last 14 years of my life doing some really hard, dirty jobs, moving across the country, one foundry at a time, and learning all sorts of cool stuff. I started getting sent to Six Sigma training, then TPS. Now, I'm pretty much my own boss, and I live where I've always wanted to live. Funny how things work out. I am a 35-year-old and I do CAD work for computer chips. In fact, I manage a team of over 10 people. Most have bachelor's or master electrical engineering degrees. I've been in the industry and doing this job since I was 19. I married my pregnant girlfriend when I was 18. My son is smart, respectful, and sarcastic. My daughter is smart, hardworking, and witty. I could not imagine a better life. I live in Seoul, Korea. My job is to commentate Korean professional gamers playing high-level games, usually StarCraft 2. I'm essentially a sports broadcaster for esports, and I do it abroad. It's a really fun job, and I don't regret for a second moving over here. My life changed when I got here, and it just keeps getting better. I'd never heard of StarCraft until StarCraft 2 came out, and I gotta say, I'm really surprised by that game's longevity. I sit in back of helicopter and fly around Bavaria all day, making sure we don't crash into stuff. I make about $30,000 a year, have no bills, and a house provided for me. Well, ain't some people just luckier than others? Construction superintendent. No day is the same and always meeting new people. Have to be on your toes all the time. Love the challenge. A degree doesn't guarantee the ability to do this job. Experience, multitasking, and problem-solving skills are must-have qualities. I'm an IT consultant and infrastructure architect for some of the most impactful IT environments in the country today. I have a great deal of satisfaction when I debate, convince, and badger people into doing things the right way to ensure that millions of people have their information protected and the environment is stable. Sitting down with what can't even be called a design and throwing out, then designing, implementing, and integrating everything from scratch is incredibly satisfying. And the working relationship I have with the team that all work together to make this happen is just, it's great. Still need to get paid more though. I am currently an arborist, tree climber, or tree trimmer. It's a fun job that is physically and mentally challenging. I also used to fight wildland fires, forest fires, with the US Forest Service. I was a member of an elite firefighting crew called a hotshot crew. It was a great job that I absolutely loved, but being gone almost all summer is difficult as a husband and father. Well, thank you for your service, and I have also played with the idea of being an arborist at one point. It's weird how many of these jobs have come up that I've even looked into. I am a power lineman. I climb power poles when applicable, bring electricity to where it is needed, put my crew on the moon, there wouldn't be a dark side. I am a cook at the Old Faithful Inn in Yellowstone National Park. A lot of these stories are like 10 years old. I do wonder if a lot of these people are still doing the same job, or maybe they moved on to even greener pastures that they enjoy even more. I'm a rope access technician for an inspection company. I love my job. I get to climb and rappel bridges, dams, roller coasters, refineries, buildings, and wind turbines to perform inspections, maintenance, and various tasks at height. Starting out pay was so well, I couldn't believe I didn't need a degree to do this. I have inspection certifications now that pretty much set me up for a career that is in very high demand. Rope access is exploding in this industry. It is such a fun job, I don't see why everyone isn't doing it. 3 words, buddy. Fear of heights. That's not referring to me. I am fine with heights. I used to be terrified of them though when I was a kid. I own and operate a cocktail lounge and restaurant. Started as a bartender, then manager, then GM. I eventually saved up to buy my first bar, eventually turned it into 4. I'm in my 40s and make more money than pretty much all my friends, a good 6-figure income. It was a long, hard road, but I'm set more or less. I could sell the lot and retire now, no worries. I love my career. It was a wonderful and hard road filled with focus, determination, and failure. It then eventually led to success. Degrees are extremely important, of course, but it doesn't guarantee success. You're limited to your own motivation and determination. Well, At least it seems that way to me. I do software support and a little development for a very large software company. I also occasionally visit custom sites to help them implement new versions of our stuff or whatever. However, I got very lucky getting this job. I was in university as a co-op student, and I took work term at a medium-sized software company. Worked there, loved it. They asked me to come back for a second term. In the middle of that one, my boss just offered me a full-time contract at $52K. At the time, I was broke and I absolutely hated my program, chemical engineering. So I took the job thinking I'd do it for a couple of years to get some savings to go back to school. That was almost 7 years ago. When I'm dealing with reasonable customers, the work is great. I solve puzzles. The only stuff I don't like dealing with is the political BS, i.e. our rules say that we shouldn't be on the phone with someone to hold their hand through very well documented procedures. But this customer sent an angry email to a manager, so we'll bend over backwards for them. I hate the squeaky wheels. However, there are tons of perks. For starters, I work from home. To not have to deal with rush hour traffic and be able to make my own lunch in my own kitchen has been very healthy for me. Secondly, I get paid a pretty good amount, $70K a year, currently with 1 to 2 raises a year and bonuses. I also get to write off parts of my electric and internet bills, among other things. Not to mention, I can work anywhere I want as long as I have a decent internet connection and I'm online during the hours I'm supposed to be online. This means I can go visit family or whatever without having to take a vacation. It's a pretty good gig. I write fiction online and draw donations from my readers for a livable wage. Writing like I do, putting up installments on a regular basis, it fixes many of the problems with writing. With regular writing, it's a lonely business. You don't get feedback or see if it'll take until it's done, and you don't get the money until it's done and successful. What I'm doing, I get regular comments. I can chat with my readers. I can shape the narrative if feedback indicates it's necessary. I do write my stories. Reader feedback can inform it, but it's not a choose-your-own-adventure. It helps that it's sort of marketing and social media on its own too. I finished my first story, a 26-book epic written over 2.5 years, and publishers, editors, startups, and agents in a small video game company have expressed interest in working with me. I have a wealth of options now, a large-ish audience of 12,000 plus readers at the height of my last story. That's very attractive to outside parties, possible Kickstarters, self-publishing, traditional publishing, or something in between. Generally speaking, I'm pretty stoked to get up in the morning these days. It's nerve-wracking at times, those 15 to 20 minutes after my chapter goes live and before the first comment comes in, and there are ups and downs, but I love what I'm doing. Well, that just sounds like a dream. I love writing personally. I don't have that much confidence in my entire ability to write, like setting up areas or dialogue and whatnot, but I do have some concepts and ideas that I think are absolute gold, and I would like to get out there someday, so this just sounds cool. I'm a professional audio and lighting technician for live events, raves, rock shows, corporate meetings, politician rallies, fundraisers, sporting events, presidents, past and present, you name it, I've done it. I'm a broadcast engineer. There isn't a school for what we do. You just start from the bottom as a wireman and work your way up. You earn the right to be called an engineer, regardless of your education. When you watch a live televised event, say the Super Bowl or Academy Awards, there are usually a team of people making sure that all the cameras, audio, and video equipment on site is functioning. I'm one of those guys. Stress level is very high, but the skills and relationships you develop, it's worth it. Honestly, it's the perfect job for a single person, as you'll spend more time on a plane than anywhere else, but the scenery changes every day, and the pay at my company is the best in the industry. For the record, I am sorry if some of you get frustrated when I decide to change voice randomly, but sometimes I get bored just reading in the same voice. Pilot, I get to travel the world, the pay is crap, and you work a ton. I can't imagine doing anything else. I flew a plane once. It's very expensive to get even an hour-long lesson on a plane. It's crazy. Like getting your pilot's license, I believe, you need at least 60 hours in the air before you can move on to more stuff. I'm a butcher. It's kind of cool seeing all the cuts of meat you can get out of one section of an animal. Also being able to take a 1,000-pound animal and turn it into something people can pick up at the store and throw in a pan for dinner is awesome. And now you're making me hungry. Children of single parents, who is the worst person your parent has dated? My dad started dating a woman who firmly believed that I was part of his old life and that he needed to cut ties with me. I was 14 and became terrified my mom would find someone who would do the same, and I'd end up with no family. My dad's ex-fiancée, she was almost our evil stepmother until one day she decided to call me a fat, lazy female dog, and my dad realized how awful she was to my sister and I. That was the day I learned how much he actually cared for us as well. He dumped her butt and kicked her out of the house. Her awful daughter left too, and it was finally peaceful at my dad's again. He dated her on and off for years afterwards until she went back with her ex-husband. My dad has sworn her off for good now, which I'm glad for since she was a toxic person. I wish he could find someone worth his time though. I know he gets lonely. We'll call him Jose. Younger than my mom, chronically unemployed, a drinker, violent, and literally illiterate. But good-looking, so my mom was smitten. My mom was from a good, in-name family. She had education, she had 2 little daughters, and she brought this scumbag to our peaceful little apartment, and he settled in right away, beating the crap out of all of us, impregnating my mom 4 times, running off for months, and never paying child support. When he was around, he would beat on us mercilessly, and my mom just stood by like a frickin' div, not intervening. When my younger brother was hooping for attention, Jose, a grown man, would hit him. Finally, my mom got diagnosed with lupus and Jose found out and literally abandoned her at the pharmacy. Years later, we find out that he had been sexually abusing my older sister. I am still so mad at my mom for the decades of bullcrap we endured with that man. He was literally a cancer and she couldn't summon the self-esteem to leave him, even when he was beating us with extension cords. There's a poem by Nayyirah Waheed called Before You Get That Key Made that should be handed out to every single mother. To hell with your loneliness, protect your kids. Well, that was utterly mortifying to read, and I hope things are better for you now. I can think of 2. First of all, my biological father. They got back together for a few weeks. He was a douche. I'd recently got my first pet, a ginger kitten, but I was having previously unknown allergy issues with it. Things were stabilizing for me though, and I was getting used to it when one day my new cat disappeared. My dad admitted that he let it out of the door because he knew I'd been struggling. I spent weeks searching, but never found it. The second was my stepdad. He was actually a really good guy and head over heels in love with my mom. I actually miss him a lot. The reason he was one of the worst? Well, my mom died when I was 17, and overnight my stepdad changed. Within a month, he was in a relationship with another family member, and suddenly he was violent and abusive, left me with no food or money, attacked me for accidentally breaking an ornament of his, and ultimately forced me to run away from home. I was on couch hopping for 9 months and never spoke to him again. Again, goddamn, I hope this person is doing better now. My mom is a serial dater. I have long since stopped paying attention to who she was dating. There was a few doozies, so let me talk about them. B. He came into my life when I was still forming self-awareness and memories. All I remember of him was screaming at my mom about leaving. G. A drunk who was verbally abusive. I remember him once deciding that I was not able to leave the table until I had finished every bite of the meatloaf that he made that night out of the blue. I threw up after stuffing myself with it. Mom stood there while this new rule was randomly enforced. He also called my brother the meaner term for a child born out of wedlock because he had been complaining of pain while standing up. Apparently, that was a personal attack and he needed to cuss out a 5th grader. M. A foster parent of 8 very unwell boys. I was the only girl in the house. There was asexual abuse that I was blamed for from his foster boys and from his own son. He would scream at me like his foster children because I didn't want to play basketball with them. I was screamed at for humming. He eventually had to move me into his closet, so that's where I slept while he would drop his clothing on me in the morning. He was cheating on my mom while she fed and clothed and parented all 11 children in that house. When they broke up, Mom blamed me because I had torn the family apart when I told a teacher about the asexual abuse I was experiencing. ? Some guy she met at a bar, he was really interested in meeting her children, specifically 10-year-old me. Within 2 hours of him coming into the house, he had invited us all out to a nude beach nearby. It was very freeing, he insisted, and he thought I would love it there. Mom didn't make him leave the house for the night, and I slept in her room with the door locked. P. Of all the buttholes, this is who I hate the most. They dated on and off for a few years. I hated him from the minute I met him because my gut and my history had already labeled him as untrustworthy and a heel. I wasn't wrong. Not only did he cheat on my mom throughout their relationship, but he had hidden his AIDS status from my mom and also insisted culturally that he could not wear condoms. Mom thankfully hasn't tested positive for HIV, but part of me wants to deport that man. He was called Greg. He was an abusive prick. He used to lock me and my brothers out in the rain while my mom was at work and had no way of contacting her. He did it in all weathers. He broke my mom's arm in front of me and my brothers. One time, he grabbed my face so hard, his nails left a cut in my cheek. My mom and my 2 aunties got their own back though. My mom stole his change jar. His change jar had notes in. There were no 1 pences or 2 pences, only silvers and more. One auntie smashed every single thing he had. Car windows, house windows, TVs, everything. She also promised to beat him whenever she sees him, and she kept that promise. And has hit him 7 times so far on nights out. My other auntie kept reporting him to his boss for things that he hadn't done, but they couldn't disprove, like being horrible, swearing at her, and he was fired. He was a real piece of crap, and the actions of my family may have been drastic, if not illegal, but he mostly, definitely deserved this. You know, if you screw someone over or mess with someone and abuse their trust, their love enough over time, eventually they might just snap right back at you, and they might be snapping at you for years to come, and I don't think I'll feel sorry for you when they do. The worst definitely has to be my biological dad. I don't know too much about him, but he was an addict and later got sent to prison on the other side of the country for 5 years. He would write to my mom and me saying he would come back soon and everything would be good. At this time, I knew what state he was in, but I was being told that he was just working there. I was too young to understand. When I was 8, I got to talk to him on the phone for the first time since he got arrested. He told me that he had been arrested and wasn't actually working there. My whole family knew where he was, but wouldn't tell me otherwise, and hearing the truth both hurt and blew my mind, and I still have problems because of that today. After he got out of prison, he stayed on the other side of the country, got a construction job, eventually married a girl with 2 kids. Him and my mom were never married, by the way, and he and his wife had 2 more kids together. He later got back into his addictions. His wife left him in fear that her previous husband would find out about my dad's addictions and take his 2 kids back. He came back for a while and lived with his parents. I saw him maybe 2 times during this. Was weird talking to him. He later went back to the other side of the country, and last I've heard, he has been in and out of addiction centers and is likely in one of the many tense cities in that state. It's Cali. I don't know why I'm hiding it. Luckily, his dad, my grandpa, and most of the rest of his family are really good people. My grandpa keeps me updated on that side of the family, and I visit or go on vacation with them once in a while. Very nice people. 2 of my uncles are in the military. The other uncle suffers from alcohol addiction problems, but gets by best he can. So yeah, that's my story. Thanks to anyone who actually took the time to read it. You are most welcome. My dad has a habit of dating horrible women. The exception was his last girlfriend, who he thought of proposing to, but they broke up before that happened. He also had a thing for Nancys. The first Nancy he dated was okay. I just hated living with her and sleeping on her living room floor. The second Nancy was an abusive douche to my brother and I. We were forced to sleep in her son's room, and my bed was next to the wall adjoined to my dad and her room. She would force us to wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to go to her mother's, to go on a bus, to go to a youth church. Her mother accused me of causing her cat to kill its kittens. This Nancy made me and my brother eat outside during the height of mosquito season without bug spray, while she, my dad, and her son ate inside. She also wouldn't let me eat anything while she wasn't home and was angry when I went over to the apartment next door to watch a movie with the other little girl there and had Dorito chips because I was starving. This lady also grounded me for watching TV because I didn't wake her up in time to go on said church bus. I didn't have a clock in the room where I slept, and we weren't allowed to leave the room during the night. She didn't even have a working television. The third Nancy was a lazy, addicted scumbag who used my dad for money and treated her daughter and I like crap while treating my brother like he was king. Her daughter and I had to clean the entire apartment while she and my dad smoked and drank in the basement. We also weren't allowed snacks and had to make our own food. Mind you, these are all before I turned 13, and he dating these women for like a year at a time. My brother and I were frequently forced to move in with him and his girlfriends. We lived at our grandparents from the time I was 5, and they were my parents. I hated all of his girlfriends, except, like I said before, the last one. He's been single for a while now and seems to be doing okay. I rarely hear from him, but saw him this past Christmas, where he met my daughter for the first time. She's a year and a half old. We don't have a relationship really, but who knows, maybe he has changed, maybe not. For now, I keep my distance mostly for my daughter's sake and my sanity. 19 years of abuse and neglect isn't cancelled out in a night. So true. And what's with this theme of people neglecting their children, or people that they get with just openly neglecting their partner's children? Like, I don't get that. How could someone just sit by and let their children be unfairly treated? I mean, maybe this guy was like worried about, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but maybe this guy was like worried because he was living at her house, he had to play by her rules or else they wouldn't have anywhere to go for a while. I don't know, I should stop playing devil's advocate. People are messed up and stupid. Chad is the only swear word in our house. Our mom used to date this douchebag when my littlest brother was a couple years old, and sadly he picked up some of his habits. Funniest thing is, this butthole got karma big time. He adored his car so much, and every time he got a new one, he'd hit IDOWorkHereLady. there. He used to abuse our mom for stupid reasons, and I had 2 kids who we all felt really bad for, especially his oldest. Hope his buck got even more karma. I was confused for him, and I was like, wait, he just hits a deer every time he gets a new car? It's like a ritual for him, but no, it's just an accident every time? I find that hard to believe. My dad's girlfriend straight up bullied me. My dad is currently dating a woman who manipulated the hell out of me as a child. When I was 9 or 10, she would tell me my real mom wanted to adopt my younger sister so she would get more money once she filed for divorce on my father. One time, I left my flat iron plugged in the bathroom. Not on, just plugged in. The next time I was at their house, I went to straighten my hair and couldn't find my flat iron, so I asked her if she saw it. She told me she threw it out and giggled like a freak. Irked me so badly. I asked her why she would do that and begged her to tell me if she was kidding. I asked her to buy me a new one because I had spent my own money on it and really needed it for my poofy hair. She just laughed and kept telling me it was gone. I ended up spending $40 on a new one, and her response was that I wouldn't have had to do it if you hadn't left the first one plugged in. Fast forward to Christmas that year when I had one gift left under the tree. I opened it up excitedly to find, you guessed it, my frickin' flat iron. The one she threw away, and the one I had to replace because I left it plugged in the wall, same as you would a TV when it's not on. My dad's girlfriend crying, laughing, and I was just so confused and uncomfortable. I was 16 then, and 5 years later I still haven't forgotten that feeling. I feel like this may seem like nothing to some people, but this was all happening while she was trying to convince me to move out of my mom's house and in with her and my dad, accusing me of heavy substance use, starving myself, both never true, and telling me how I was the daughter she never had but always wanted. That crap was so confusing. I'm glad I'm away from that now and getting the help I need to move on. Moral of the story, don't give your partner control over your kids. They might be nuts. I don't know, obviously, because I don't really have any intention of getting with a woman who already has children and whatnot, but it must be hard as, like, you know, a step parent of some sort, I suppose, to figure out where the line really is with telling your partner's kids what to do. I'm not referring to this situation, I'm just saying in general it's probably difficult. This woman in particular, though, sounds petty as all hell. The man she ended up marrying, he all-out demanded respect, that my brother and I call him sir. He yelled a lot and whined when he didn't get his way. One time, I refused to call him sir, and he beat the crap out of me. Broke my hand and left bruises all up my back from being kicked on the ground. After that, he refused to take me to the hospital, so I, a boy, walked 5 miles to the hospital myself. Mom is still with him. She chose him over me. I don't see either of them anymore 20 years later. That is probably the greatest pain I can imagine, like your parent, your guardian, whatever, choosing someone else over you, unjustly, that is. I mean, if you've done really bad things and it's just like they've had enough of you, I guess that's the case, but in this case. My father dated a girl which made my parents' couple break. This girl was poorly washed, had her 7 kids homeschooled, and her husband was working far away. Plus, she looked like a literal witch. Raised by my dad, he dated a pathological liar named Patricia for about 7 years. My dad was moving from Florida to Middlesex, Virginia. He met her in VA. She seemed nice enough. I was 19 and joining the Marines, so I didn't go to Virginia with him. Stayed with a friend in Florida till I left. Gave my Bronco and my dog Angel to my dad to look after while I was gone. On my first deployment, I get told that my dog got very sick. I got her one summer when I was 10 and raised her myself because my dad was constantly working to support us. I loved her like a daughter. Now I'm getting told that Angel is dying. The dogs with my dad go outside and free roam because they're well behaved and intelligent, so they believe she may have ingested some antifreeze because their nearest neighbor has old vehicles that could potentially be leaking. We were thick as thieves. My little girl dies and I'm not there to comfort her. Fast forward many years, I leave the military. Go to Virginia. My dad is leaving Trish and moving a few counties away, so I had to figure out somewhere else to stay. Asked him what happened. He said that she was cheating, lying, abusing pain meds, etc. He said his first big flag was when he witnessed a friend of Trish's call her a liar. Trish swore on her daughter's life that whatever the topic was true in tears. Thing is, my dad knew for a fact that Trish was lying. She had also pulled the same act on him. Things unraveled gradually after that, and then he decided to seek greener pastures. About a year later, I get a call from my dad. He was on Facebook chatting with an old mutual friend he had with Trish, who also turned away from her. Conversation somehow got on the subject of the woman's very vocal dogs. She told my dad that Trish had told her she should just poison them with antifreeze if she disliked her dogs. Trish then went on to say that she had gotten rid of one of her ex's dogs that way. 2 + 2 = 4. Trish murdered my angel. My dad is currently dating someone my age. He's 53 and she's 22, so there's that.
Ooh, boy, that's an uncomfortably big age gap right there.
I kind of think once you're in your 20s, it's really up to you who you date. It takes 2 to tango, and, just try and make wise choices that are good for you, Don't get with a douchebag who might abuse your trust or manipulate you. That's all I have to say about it, really. Well, pretty much every guy my mom has dated thus far has been a butthole in some way, shape, or form, but I'd say the worst was my stepfather, who was also the father to both my little brother and sister. See, my mom just turned 16 when she had me. I spent the first few years of my life with my grandparents while my mom went off to college. When she came back when I was 6, she brought back the man that would make my life a living hell for the next 4 years. My grandparents did shelter me a bit too much, and because of that, my stepfather tried to effectively rewrite me into his definition of a son, someone I was the exact opposite of. Because of how old I was, this was effectively impossible, and it made him angry. I was excessively punished for some of the smallest things. I forget what it was for, but once he wanted me to clean our entire dining room and kitchen floor with a toothbrush, a good 200+ square feet of tile. I got done with one row before my mom stepped in. Thankfully, he would force me into doing things I simply didn't want to do. He forced me onto a carnival ride at our annual state fair that I was terrified to go on. I'm so thankful the guy I sat next to comforted me through it. There were some things he forced me into that left me with physical scars. We once threw a football at each other for so long that my thumbs started to bleed. They are really faint, but you can still see the scars from the day 15 years later. Time and time again, he was met with resistance in turning me into his definition of a son, and every time it happened, it only aggravated him more and more. It didn't help that in those first 6 years I developed a deep relationship with my grandparents, only for him to hate both of them with a burning passion for some reason. He finally died when I was 10 by rolling his car doing probably 80 miles per hour and got thrown out of the window for not wearing a seatbelt. Despite all of that, I don't hate him. The damage he did is certainly still there. I mean, he came in at the worst possible point in my life, and I'm not entirely sure if the damage could ever be truly repaired, but he did give me 2 of the best things in my life, my brother and sister. My brother is in his first year of college, going to ASU on a full ride from National Guard, and my sister is in her sophomore year of high school. When my brother graduated high school, he told me that he's the person he is today, mostly because of me, and him saying that was like getting a return on all of those years of hell. He was only 4 when my stepfather died, and it was years before my mom started dating again. Since she was the only income for our family, I was left with basically raising my 2 siblings while going through middle and high school. But that one line made it all worth it. Well, it truly warms my heart to find a story with a nice silver lining in it. When I was younger, probably around 9 or so, my mom dated this guy named Jim. I don't remember much about him except that he smelled weird. But after they broke up, she tried to delete herself and she was in the hospital for a few days. I remember her telling someone on the phone the night before that we, her 4 kids, would be fine without her. Thankfully, it's been 18-ish years later, and she's alive and well, and has been married for almost 16 years. As for my dad, he dated this awful woman named Tracy off and on for 7 or so years. She was always talking crap. She made mine and my dad's relationship horrible. She also made terrible eggs. When they broke up, my brother and I jumped for joy. He's been married for 4.5 years now to an incredible woman who I love dearly, and me and him are so close now. As soon as Tracy left, our relationship drastically changed for the better. I think this all goes to show how important it is to be brave. You gotta be brave to be able to walk away from a situation that you've grown used to out of fear of what the unknown is, because you might be like, yeah, things are bad now, but maybe they'll get better. But you need that bravery to be like, no, I need to walk away and whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. It could be a bit worse. It could be a bit better. But, if you don't have the bravery to face life itself, really, when you're having a tough time, then you'll never know if you can actually find that happiness that you deserve. enough. Hopefully that made sense. What is the most messed up thing your parents have done to you? While growing up, my parents would argue every so often, and it would escalate to screaming matches, and it pretty much sucked. This went on until I was 4 or so. The last time it happened, my father struck my mother, and she decided it was time for us to leave. We lived out in the country where neighbors weren't around for miles. The closest neighbor we had was about 7 miles away. My mother grabbed my baby brother and headed out the door. I was already outside, avoiding them and their screaming. She told me to follow her, so I did. As we were leaving the property, my father yells out for my mother to come back, which she refuses to do so. "Come back, or I'll dispense a bullet in alt account 9229. She turned and refused again, and I turned around in disbelief. My father threatened to shoot me if she didn't come back. I just stood there, not knowing what to do. He called out to her name, "Come back now." I stood there as my mother walked back to grab my hand. As she reached for it, my father pulled the trigger. The next thing I remember was waking up in the hospital 2.5 weeks later. My father actually did it. And that is the worst thing either of my parents have done to me. My dad came out when I was 15. My mother, a religious zealot, pretty much manipulated my view of him, declaring that he was destroying not only their marriage, but also our family, and dragged me to love one-out conferences which were, for all intents and purposes, brainwashing, bigoted, gay-bashing parties. She forced me into Christian counseling and cried to me daily about how horrible he was. I found myself distancing myself from my father, whom I had considered my best friend for most of my life. Eventually, about 3 months later, I realized that she was one of the most hateful and hurtful human beings on earth and came back to my dad asking for forgiveness. He's sitting next to me while we are vacationing in Hawaii right now, and my mother and I have a weird distant relationship now. My stepdad, or one of my mom's pimps, depending on how you look at it, stole my high school girlfriend, got her addicted to illegal substances, and turned her into a hooker. He even told me he was going to do it as soon as he met her. Okay, I think that might be the worst one. That is the worst one, and I hope that guy's in prison, or dead, preferably from horrible, unnatural causes. I married a woman for her papers. Her parents were illegal immigrants. She was born in Mexico 3 months before they made their exodus. When she was 25 years old, she found out that the social security number that her mom was using was actually hers. She was born in Ontario, Canada, not Mexico. As a result of being raised thinking she was an illegal, she dropped out of high school believing she wouldn't be able to graduate high school without a social security number. Damn, that mom kinda screwed her kid over. My parents guilted me into loaning them $8,000, over half my paycheck, for a year when I was 17. It is now 4 years later, and I'm pretty sure they have no intention of paying me back. I think my dad forgot it ever happened. My mom and dad separated when I was 8. When I turned 15, he was diagnosed with colon cancer and died a year later. On his deathbed, she did everything she could to talk him into marrying her again, all while he was extremely medicated. She had him brought to out home for hospice so he could be with his children. He never agreed to marry her again, regardless of her constant attempts, but he did make the mistake of giving her power of attorney. He passed away, and she took all of his estate for herself and conned my sisters and I into signing away parts of our inheritance while we were still young and dumb. All 3 of us. 14 years later, still have financial trouble when we could have had our lives and education taken care of by our hard-working father. We no longer acknowledge her as anything but our birth giver now that we're all grown up and know what she did to our family. His death day is the 21st of July. Rest in peace, Dad. I understand wanting a lot of money for yourself. I get it. But when you're so greedy that you're like,
No, the money's only mine. Screw my children. They can go to hell for all I care.
it's just, what the hell? You are too greedy. Mine used my social security and other personal information to drain $76,000 from my savings account, which I had built up over the course of saving every penny, working in a crappy used bookstore for 5 years while selling Magic the Gathering cards on the side in high school.
Hey, Brandine, we gotta dip into the boys' Magic the Gathering card money.
That is how that conversation went down. You can't convince me otherwise. Sorry your parents stole all your money. My dad has been saving up for me to go to college since I was really young. When the time finally came, I applied to my top choice of college, and I got in. I even got a financial aid package with the school covering $47,000 of the $56,000 bill. The first payment is due in less than a month, and my dad gets the idea to tell me he can't afford for me to go anymore. It turns out he took all the money he saved for me and spent it to fix his house so he could sell it. But that's not the end. He bought my sister a car, one that she relies on to get to work and school. My other sister sister dropped out of high school a few months before she would have graduated. She also has no desire to drive, but yet she convinced my father to take the car from my sister just so she wouldn't have it. Sounds like a case of sibling resentment that's been going on for a bit too long. My mom's husband got sent to jail. While he was there, I let my mom stay with me as he was the provider in their home. She ran my phone bill up over $2,000 in collect calls. I also helped get her on assistance so she could help with rent as we moved to a bigger place to be able to fit everyone. I first had to pay off a bank account over $200 that was in overdraft for her to be able to get money. When she finally got her assistance check, she put me on the phone with the butthole so he could tell me that she sent the whole thing to him as he just got out of jail and needed money. That jerk-off went to jail for child smut. Then to boot, she took off to go stay with him without a goodbye, and I haven't seen her in 4 years, and she refuses to come back. We were really close before all of this. Let me tell you what my old man did to me before I was old enough to talk. Because my father loved me so very much, he decided that we should share the same name. My mom had the foresight to be wary of this. She figured with the same name, financial mishaps could easily be blamed on the wrong person. My dad assured her that due to our age difference, that could never happen. However, money got tight around the time I turned 1, and my dad didn't want to cut back. So, what did he do? He opened 5 new lines of credit with my social security number and maxed them all out in a matter of months. That might have been okay if he had ever intended to pay them back, but of course he didn't. When I turned 18 and applied for, well, anything, I got a resounding no. I decided to check my credit, and what did I see? Well, you've already heard the story, so yeah, 5 maxed out credit cards. But that's not all. He also assigned medical bills to me, as well as large amounts of other miscellaneous stuff. I've been fighting this crap from the onset of my adult life, and no, I haven't been able to resolve it all yet. Some things would require that I go to court, and call me old-fashioned, but I can't sue my parents. Screw the credit system, and screw irresponsible parents. Clearly, there was a reason why your mother was wary in the beginning. My parents have each dated and married and divorced people that are younger than my brothers and me. The worst thing, however, that I've witnessed my dad do is push my grandma down a flight of stairs. My mom does horrible things all of the time. When I was a child, she once took my brothers and me to a guy's house while my stepdad was at work. They put us in front of the TV with a pizza and had loud SX in the bedroom. They got divorced while I was in college and didn't tell me. They pretended to be together for 4 months until I decided to randomly come home to surprise them. It was rather surprising to see all my dad's stuff gone and pictures of my mom and some other guy up all over the place. When I was 17, I woke up at 3:30 a.m. to see 2 men I had never seen before talking with my parents. I was informed I was being sent to a wilderness program in Utah and that we were going to be leaving in a few minutes. I was forced to get dressed and I was driven to the airport by these 2 thugs. The next morning, I was freezing in the Utah mountains. My mother is terrible with money, so when I went to college and started getting refund checks to help pay for my rent, she started asking me for money. She always promised that she would pay me back in time. She just needed the money at the moment. And now I'm even caring for my underage brother since she could not deal with him anymore. By the end of this semester, I was 3 months late on my own rent payments after having paid for a few of her own rent payments, her taxes, her car troubles, and her having filed affidavits to bring her parents, she's from the Philippines, over here, and even though she got nearly $1,800 a month, she works as a nurse at a big local hospital, she couldn't afford to pay me back even without paying her rent, dropping our cell phone plan, revoking our insurance, and not paying her car payments, on which I'm the lead signer. Yeah, people who are bad with money, especially family members who are fine with not only the erosion of their relationship with you, but also just generally being a pain in the butt in your life, God, they're the worst. My mom decided to leave my dad on Christmas morning when I was 5. Her way of telling him was to just take me and leave. We went to her mother's house where Mike, a guy she used to date before my dad, just happened to be. Truthfully, Dad had been cheating on her too, and he was on illegal substances and was an alcoholic. Anyway, I remember that one night we went to Mike's house and I remember laying on the floor crying about wanting to go home. I remember telling Mom that I smelled the devil's lettuce, and Mike complimented me on how smart I was. Anyway, she divorced Dad, married Mike, and divorced him, and married again by September. As mentioned, Dad was an alcoholic alcoholic and an addict, and that continued for many years. He's admitted to trying every substance except for one, as he was afraid of the side effects. I remember one night when Dad was really depressed, and he told me about how he tried to self-delete himself. He thought about doing it, but then thought about me and decided not to. The only way I could make sense of why he was telling me this was that he wanted to see me hurt, that he gained some sort of pleasure from my pain, and I decided that I would never let him see that he hurt me again. I have very few memories from before my parents split, and I only saw my dad on the weekends after that, and he lived in his parents' basement. Still does, actually. And I spent most of my time there with my grandparents. Growing up, I saw my dad not as a parent, but as someone who I could play video games with. When my grandparents would be planning a vacation, they would let my mom know so she could plan an excuse so as to not send me there without them. There were some rough times and so many broken promises. I remember once when I went downstairs to see Dad and the door was locked and I knocked and didn't get a response and his car was there, so I went back upstairs and told my grandparents. My grandfather went down and ended up breaking the door to get in and found my dad passed out after getting really drunk and taking a lot of sleeping pills. There were so many times I remember when Dad's friends came over and they'd go to the other room to buy and sell and smoke whatever. So many times I know that he put his pleasures above my safety, driving drunk or stoned or taking me along when he was buying illegal substances. Things were bad to the point where we had discussed what to do if I answered the door and it was the police looking for him, or one of his buddies. I was to ask if they had a warrant, and if they didn't, to close the door. I was probably in about 7th grade when I was upstairs getting ready for church when there was a knock at the door. I went to the door and the man identified himself as a detective and asked for my dad. I asked if he had a warrant and he didn't, so I started closing the door. My grandmother heard and came to the door and told him he was downstairs and that she'd go get him. I was thinking she just sold that out, but she knew that the detective was there to talk to him about him getting robbed the night before. I remember growing up wondering if my Christmas presents were stolen, as I'd sometimes get Nintendo games that were in rental boxes instead of retail packaging. I remember things getting stolen from the house and appearing a few weeks later, meaning that he pawned them somewhere. All that said, he claims to be clean now. Got attacked by a dog when I was 5 to 6, torn the left side of my face up pretty badly. My parents sue when they get informed I was the third and most serious attack from the dog. Later, animal abuse was found to have been a factor. A settlement was made, but the money was to be released to me when I turned 18. Fast forward till around my 16th birthday, and I really want a car. My parents tell me with my permission they can access the money early, and I of course agree and get my Honda and am content. Then I turn 18. My parents sit me down and tell me that the best plan is to keep the money in a CD to gain interest. I agreed to this as well. It wasn't until my 20th that I finally started to think of uses for the money, and also that I had never actually seen any statements or actual sum of money on paper from a bank or anything. For the first time, I aggressively asked my parents about it and was told the truth. You probably guessed it, but at 16, when I first gave them permission to use that money, they just used it like a new bank account, drained it dry. I don't hold any grudges. They suck with money and are impulsive. They could never afford to repay either. I'm glad I never really saw how much it was until they told me, because I might have acted like some stereotypical trust fund character. Parents do messed up stuff, but I could have had it a lot worse. Live and learn. Hanging on the edge of tomorrow. Good on this guy for being able to take it in such strides, like he says, live and learn. I would be absolutely livid, that is for sure. But like, overall, it's good that this person isn't in such dire straits or anything that they're like, bitter about it, and they're just getting on with their life, and that's cool. All respect to them. My parents got divorced when I was 8. Not a big deal, that kind of stuff happens all the time. Well, neither of them were particularly good parents. I started off living with my dad. He has huge anger issues. Literally anything will set him off and throw him into a violent tantrum. After a few years of this, I moved in with my mom in Texas. My dad and I lived in Tennessee. Well, my mom was a huge illegal substance abuser. She'd frequently use a lot of hard stuff. I could see needle marks. I don't know what she did, and frankly, I don't care. About the time I was 15, her new husband had left her and she just went insane. She would leave for weeks at a time. She would stay in hotels with strange men, and she would spend all her money on illegal substances. We frequently had our utilities turned off since she wouldn't bother paying bills. I wanted to stop living like that, so I wanted to get a job, even a crappy one, somewhere. Anywhere. However, I didn't have a driver's license. I had to take driver's ed in the state I was in. I actually asked my mom once if she would stop drinking and doing substances long enough for me to get a license and get a job. She laughed at me and just said no. I had to contact her boss once to see if they knew where she was. He felt bad for me and took me to the grocery store and bought me food, so I had food in the house. Eventually, I got tired of living like that, so I had to move back in with my dad. A few weeks after I left, she was evicted since she stopped making payments on the house, and even spent some time in prison for producing illegal substances in her house and a bunch of other messed up crap. She recently died from heart failure. As terrible of a mother as she was, it was still one of the worst times of my life. My dad didn't change much in the years I lived with my mom. He had a new wife, and he treated her and me like complete crap. He made me live essentially in a closet. If I said something he didn't like, he'd threaten me. One time, he grabbed me by the hair, threw me against the wall, and threatened to almost kill me. I immediately contacted the police. They closed the investigation pretty much immediately. At the age of 17, my dad kicked me out after an argument about, I kid you not, our ISP. The police came and wouldn't even listen to me. I was a straight A student in high school, never had a disciplinary record of any kind, and they just called me a delinquent and left. Screw the police. I told the school what happened, and I got a social services guy to work with me. I moved to my girlfriend's place down the street, and I got my car in my name. At 18, I went to college at Georgia Tech. I put myself through school. I spent 2.5 years as a TA there, and I graduated with a degree in computer science. I immediately got a job as a software engineer upon graduation, and I'm making as much as my dad does, and I'm less than half his age. Screw my parents. My dad actually sold my motorcycle while I was in college. He owes me $2,000 because of that, but I'm not even going to bother bringing it up because I don't feel like putting up with his threats anymore. Maybe it's the way I read it, but there was a point where I was like, oh, it feels like he just remembered the motorcycle thing. Like, this whole thing was like an emotional roller coaster between the Harry Potter treatment, the mother, dying, whether or not she was a bad mother and stuff, obviously emotional time for the writer. Point is, this all sucks and I feel for you. When I was younger and had my first bank account, my mother forced me to put her name on it, and my dad helped me get the account. She said that because I was a minor, she could legally get her name on the account even if I said no, and being young, I believed her. I had about $2,000 in the account saved from my first job and such. I checked my account one day afterwards, and it was at negative $2,000. I was super shocked and infuriated. Another time, after paying off the bank, when I was just turning 18, once I just hit 18, she said she wanted no more to do with me since she was no longer getting child support from my dad and was going to move to Florida. I gave her the rent money for the next month. We paid a month in advance just before she left because she was the one who always mailed it out and it was in her name. The next month after she left, I received a notice of eviction because she didn't pay the rent with the money and instead used it to fund her trip to Florida. Last but not least, right before she died, she took out a credit card in my sister's name and charged up to $15,000. My sister found out after she had passed, and because there was no proof, she was forced to pay off the 15 grand. She cut my sandwich into rectangles instead of triangles. Forgive me, I just wanted a little bit of brevity in this depressing topic. My mother's short list. Spent student loan money I sent from Japan. About $800. Derided me hugely for not driving with my drunk aunt. Chastised me for not wanting to carry her prescription of benzos through China with no script before the night of my wedding. On a trip to her place from out of town, she invited her boyfriend, who had a restraining order against me over the fact that he robbed us for our rent, causing us to get evicted, so I chased him with a bat. She had a restraining order against him too for beating her up. I had to just leave and go back home. She invited my ex to her house and fixed her up with some big black guy while we were freshly broken up at 18 years old. They screwed in my old bedroom. She adopted a guy who me and my friends warned her about. He was later arrested for attempted murder, beat her boyfriend in my apartment because she found out he had hit on my girlfriend, and now refuses to see my child, her only grandchild, because I insisted on her sobriety to see him. I could go on. Mom is kind of a C-word. There must be so much internal conflict for people whose parents are just bad and horrible to them, but it's like they're your parent and they're the only one that you've got, so you want them in your life to some degree, and you want them to be better for themselves and you. Like, God, I can't imagine. This is probably going to pale in comparison to most other people, but I can think of two things my mother did to me that were kind of messed up. The most messed up thing my dad did was leave when I was a baby, but meh, screw that guy. 1. She cut a hole in my bedroom door big enough for the cat to get through so it could get away from the new dog. The cat decided to habitually use my bed as a litter box. I was 13 at the time, so there wasn't much I could do but try to block the hole. She would yell at me for blocking the hole. Meanwhile, my bed is reeking of cat urine. No matter how much I tried to clean it, it just stunk, and eventually so did all the rest of the things in my room. I was not very popular at school that year. Eventually, I got a new bed, but only after much whining on my part. The carpet still smelled like cat pee, so I never wanted to have friends over or anything like that. Fast forward a few years. Considering that my mother seemed to value pets' comfort and security over mine, to the point where it created an unpleasant living environment for me, I decided to move out as soon as I turned 18. Although I had saved up money for my car myself, my mom's name was on the title because I was a minor. The insurance and everything else was also in her name, again because I was a minor. 2 weeks before my 18th birthday, I made arrangements and started getting ready to leave. When she found out I was planning on leaving, she took the tags off of my car and turned them into the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV. The reason that this is messed up is because now I would have to get the car re-tagged. What that entails is getting the car inspected. In this state, before a vehicle can be tagged, you must take it to a mechanic and get it certified as road safe. I had to have a few minor repairs. It was my first car, so it was a used 1993 Ford station wagon. It was bound to need work eventually anyway. But of course, the amount I had to spend was enormous because I took it to a mechanic, and I was an 18-year-old girl with no concept of anything mechanical. It came to about $300 in 2002. That was 2 weeks' paycheck at Arby's, where I had been working since I was 15 to save up enough money to get the hell out and go to college. But I did have my savings, so I dipped into it. After the inspection, I had to pay for the tags. I had to put a huge down payment on a new insurance policy because my mom canceled mine a week before she took my tags off of my car, but she still took my money when I came to her with my monthly payment, so I had to get high-risk insurance for being an uninsured motorist, even though I had no clue I was. I also had to pay taxes on my car. That's right, I had to pay frickin' taxes on a car I already paid my frickin' taxes on when I bought it. If I had been the one to turn in my tags, I would have gotten a refund from the DMV for the tags and taxes and all that. Since my mom was the one to do it, she got $250 for free. All in all, between fees, repairs, and my new awesomely high insurance rates, I spent close to $1,000 just getting my piece of crap car that probably wasn't even worth $1,000 back on the road. Happy birthday to me. I didn't have enough money to move. I had only planned on living in a rented home for the summer before I went away to college, so I hadn't allotted more than $1,500 for it. Now, unless I wanted to dip into the college fund I had set up for myself, I was stuck at home.
What question did you refuse to answer in a job interview? What's your zodiac sign? At first, I thought it was a joke, but he went on to explain in detail that it was very important that all the signs of his employees were compatible with his to prevent drama in the workplace. Then he started telling me about past lives. It was a weird interview. Why should we hire you when you just got married and will probably be starting a family soon? I initially refused to answer, but couldn't resist by the end of the interview, telling them that I'd had my tubes tied for years and literally couldn't have kids. My race. They were interviewing to fill several positions at an office near downtown where they were in need of Spanish-speaking workers because the area served is mostly Hispanic. The interviewer asked me what is my race and where is my family from. He asked this because he saw that I am fluent in Spanish. I am mixed but look very white. He seemed a little perturbed that I was fluent in his native language. He kept questioning my race and why do I speak Spanish. I let him know that I have spoken Spanish since I first learned to speak. I had dual primary languages in my home. I took Spanish in high school and college. I was hired by college as a Spanish tutor, yet he doubted my knowledge because of my light skin. He did this to a girl I was chatting with in the waiting area too. I could hear her interview because they were doing them in cubicles, not private. With her, he insisted
insisted she couldn't really speak Spanish. The girl was black, but she was from Belize. Anyhow, we were both hired even though he failed us on our spoken language portions. She and I wrote grievances and had him removed, as well as our scores corrected. He interviewed another girl I knew who looks very Hispanic but barely speaks Spanish, and he does not write it. He gave her a 100. At my office, I found out he had given anyone that looked white or black very low scores, even if they aced the interview. Well, you know what they say, another day, another case of casual workplace racism. What social media do I use, and that I would be required to friend a member of the HR department? Luckily, nothing happened. There is a big trial going on at the time over employers' rights to spy on their employees online, so they didn't push it. This is kind of related to something I was thinking about the other day, in that the internet used to be a specific place that you would go to, like, just a computer, but nowadays it's on your phone, it's connected to your work, your life in general. It's just inescapable now. Honestly, I think the internet was way cooler before it became mainstream and with the advertisements, corporations and stuff. And well, you could turn off the internet at a time, but now it's just interconnected with your whole life. And that kind of sucks. I mean, can I leave my phone at home when I go for a walk? Sure I can, but I'm also thinking about work emails that I might need to respond to immediately. And just overall, it's harder to pull yourself away from the internet than it ever was in the early 2000s. Anyway, it's just genuinely good that you didn't have to do that, because privacy is important, including in the workspace. What church do you attend? I told them I didn't really think it was relevant to doing the job. They thought otherwise. In the course of one interview, I was asked, are you married? Do you have kids? Are you pregnant? When do you plan on becoming pregnant? How old are you? The interviewer then proceeded to tell me she needed to ask these questions because the last LAA she hired was pregnant and left for maternity leave within 5 months, and the interviewer was not happy with that. The kicker, I was interviewing at a civil law firm and being interviewed by a paralegal. I'm a girl and have a trade and have always worked with only men. Most interviews bring up the subject in a polite way, like situational questions asking what I would do if a coworker was being sexist, etc. One particular interview with a company called Redacted, the interviewer straight out asked if I have a boyfriend. I said no, more out of shock. He continued on to say that I'm very young and around the age where I will probably get pregnant. I just sat there and stared. He then asked me if I planned on getting pregnant because if so, they would not hire me. Every single question he asked was specifically about the fact that I'm a girl, and there were no job-related questions. I just said, thanks, but no thanks. Well, if they made you that uncomfortable, it's probably for the best. The only reason why I think they might not have asked any work-related questions was probably because, as you already stated, this is an industry you are familiar with, I believe, and maybe your resume was just superb, so they didn't really feel the need to ask you any questions about that. I mean, from what you're saying, it sounds like they were already interested in hiring you, except they were worried about you going on maternity leave. Which, if I were to play devil's advocate and put myself in that position, yeah, it would be kind of annoying to hire someone, and then after a few months, it's just, well, bye. But at the end of the day, I also understand why women going out for jobs and careers would be really annoyed at that question being asked regularly. I mean, it comes up a lot in this topic. I once got asked what my parents did for a living. It was for a cleaning position. I was like, what? This guy asked me a bunch of word puns and riddles. I answered one thinking he was joking, then asked him what the point was, and he didn't know. Later in the interview, he asked me if I could promise I wouldn't get pregnant for my first year there. And in the end, I got the job. I had a few in the only interview I ever did for a farm machinery sales agent. Can you safely say that you won't have any serious accidents whilst working here? Have you ever been pregnant, or are you going to become pregnant in the next 8 months? Have you ever had a boyfriend, and if yes, did you have SX while together? Are you still together? Again, I can understand the perspective and reasoning from an employer's standpoint of why they ask these questions, but to a degree, it's just like, where do you get off? Do you have any medical or mental issues? My medical history is my business, not theirs. I work at a major university, and we have an office of disability services, which can assist you in accommodating a disability, etc. So I technically do have a disability according to the university's parameters, and therefore I fall under this protection. I've been shopping around for a different job at the same institution, and in one interview, they actually asked me what my disability was. I was shocked they would ask, since that is pretty expressly forbidden by university policy, and refused to answer. I didn't get a call back, but based on them asking, I didn't want to work there either. I may have dropped an anonymous note to HR about it. So I understand that this is to some degree not down, I guess, but I also actually don't really see the issue in asking. Like, I don't know, I've got learning difficulties, for example. If someone asks, I'm not really insulted by them asking. I'm more annoyed in situations where people make assumptions about me because I have a certain learning difficulty. What's even more annoying than that is when people just make assumptions based on their lack of knowledge on what I have. Like, I don't know, this one just seems kind of petty in my opinion. Would you and your wife be interested in this traveling swingers club I help run? We could show you the town, get you to meet new people. It'll be fun. I was the interviewer. I'm a guy. Interviewee was a girl. And in case you were curious about what question to never ask in an interview, this is among the top 10. No, I didn't answer it. I just said that we're out of time and I had to go. HR will show you out. Someone will be in contact with you. See you later. Goodbye. Nice knowing you. Too bad you can't stay. What happened was that she was banned from ever applying, and since Silicon Valley is so close-knit, I'm sure the HR types got the word out that she was a walking sexual harassment suit waiting to happen. I had an employer actually ask if I was a Christian. I'm not. He said that they follow Christian principles in their business and they'd like to know how I would fit in. I told him that it's illegal to ask that question and I'm not comfortable answering it. He ended the interview right there. I didn't get the job, which I'm glad for because working there sounds like my personal hell. I should have sued and just taken it easy for a few years. The CIA asked me what laws I would be willing to break if I was hired by them. I didn't really know how to answer and I said I would have to know more about the situation. I didn't get the job. I may not refuse to answer a question outright, but depending on the personality of the interviewer, I will make jokes about the questions, especially if it's obvious that they think the questions are stupid too. The biggest one for me is, what is your biggest flaw? If I know the interviewer is receptive to jokes, I'll reply with something like, a low tolerance for irrelevant questions. We had a good laugh about it and moved on to the next question in the interview. Interview question at a small consulting firm in DC. Did great work, friends there with nice salaries and benefits. I put down on my resume, as a consultant at another firm, this line, paraphrasing for privacy and not doxing myself, optimized performance and logistics of new product line, increasing profit margins by 30% at big firm. It's one of my huge achievements, and leaving out details was never a problem for any other consulting firms like McKinsey, for example. I didn't mention who that big client on the resume that I was working for was, because most of them are supposed to be confidential. The interviewer's eye fell on that bullet, and as I revealed a couple of details like industry, my role, how I did the job, the achievement, etc., she insisted on asking who the client was, which doesn't really matter at that point. I kept rebuffing her, stating that I can't reveal my client or the product lines still in development at the time due to confidentiality agreements. This went on for 5 minutes until the interview basically derailed and she ended it, telling me that I was uncooperative and I shouldn't expect a call. After cursing my luck and damning that wretched woman, seriously, who insists on asking such a stupid question? I can't reveal who it is because I breached contract, and in consulting, you should respect your client's privacy. I did get a call a couple of weeks later from a board member who heard about my interview and offered me a job. It was a good year and my interviewer got flack some months after she left the company because she started revealing details about her clients, which got an entire team at that firm in trouble because of breach of contract. Big lesson, kids. If you have a confidentiality agreement that is still ongoing and hasn't expired, you should respect it, even in an interview for another job. Otherwise, kiss your career goodbye. I mean, it's kind of a good idea to just generally respect contracts that you sign in general, and if you're not sure about them, read them very, very carefully. Or pay someone to read them, because reading contracts can be super boring. I sat in on an interview for a PA with my boss. When on the subject of marriage and kids, my boss asked the interviewee if she had married out of love or if her family had arranged it. She answered love, and we thought that was the end of it. He then proceeded to ask if she was raising her kids as Sikhs and if she would be comfortable working in an environment with lots of men. I cringed so much in that interview, but the lady held her own and is basically still working for us. There was no malice in what my boss was asking. He was genuinely just interested in her culture, but went the complete wrong way about it. Just the other week, when we were all out for a meal, he kept asking her if his pronunciation of basmati was right. The best of it is she came from an Indian family but has lived the Western culture all her life. She's just as clueless as he is, but finds it all very hilarious. I was actually asked for the username and password to my Facebook, Twitter, and any other social media accounts I may have. I flat said, no, that information will not be forthcoming. The interviewer looked up as though to say, just who the heck do you think you are? And replied, excuse me? I replied that I never saw the use or need for social media. I have the ability to instantly message, call, or go to meet people within my circle in person, and I felt that social media was a tool further used to divide us rather than bring us together. He just stared at me until I finally said, I follow a 3P rule when I'm online. I never post anything I don't want my parents, a priest, or a predator finding out, which means you can rest assured that there will be no impropriety to harm your business. I'm here to make money by making you money. He continued to stare at me, and I finally said, I'm sorry, I seem to be wasting your time. I thank you anyway, and you have a wonderful day. I got a call 3 weeks later, same guy. He actually tried looking me up and couldn't find me or a reference to me. I didn't get the job, but I did get considered. The moral to this tale? Follow the 3P rule and never ever use your real name, nor should you ever allow anyone else to use your real name if you can at all control it. Okay, now first off, obviously, interviewer, massive invasion of privacy, stupid question to ask, but also, while right, this person definitely went off on something that they've been thinking about for a long time in their feelings of social media that just wasn't necessary. And I say that as a bit of a hypocrite because while it is my job to read these for you and give my thoughts on some of them, I do absolutely go on tangents. So the interview questions can be very different from what we're used to in the West. It is common to ask what your parents do, if you're married or plan on getting married, how much alcohol you can drink. This is not to determine if you have a drinking problem, but because after work drinking with coworkers is a big part of Korean work culture. So the more booze you can handle, the better. How much money you have, religion, and when you apply for a job, you have to send a photo of yourself along with your application. If you're not deemed good looking enough, and often if you're black or Indian or another undesirable race, you won't get the job. It is slowly changing though. Anyone else pick up on the discomfort in my voice as I was quoting that? Why is a pretty girl like you looking for a job? You should just find a rich guy and get married. For context, I was fresh out of high school at 17 plus, and this was the first interview I had ever done in my life at a small shipping yard for the position of a clerk. I decided to go to college after that. It does get worse as I approach marriageable age, as constant barrages of questions on my plans to get married and how many kids I want to have get into the interview instead of what I want to bring to the table at work and discussing my career prospects. Women have a big challenge when it comes to being taken seriously at work, especially if you look a certain way. Yes, I do get a lot of probing why I didn't try my hands at sales, as it would be just too easy for you to get a lot of sales during the time I was at marketing. Previous salary. It's none of their business. I will talk about the salary range that I'm interested in, but answering previous salary questions will only screw you. That is certainly true. Never ever disclose your previous salary with a new potential employer.
Well, I refuse to answer if I was religious and not a fornicator.
Well, that's all right if you don't want to tell us, sir, because God already knows. I assume this was for an employer that had a very religious tilt. When I lived in DC, I had an interview with the mayor's office. Mind you, he was a mayor I didn't particularly like. When I got there, it was like 75 people waiting in a big room. When it was finally my turn, they brought me into another room. The first 5 minutes were standard interview questions, but the two 20-year-olds conducting the interview were completely uninterested. Neither of them looked up from their Blackberries once. I was getting extremely irritated, as I knew I had much more political experience than them anyway. So when one of them, with her face still in her Blackberry, said, "Tell me 5 things you love about Mayor Fenty," I had it. I said, "I think we're done here," and got up and left. That got them to look at me. Not a question so much as a request. Was a senior in college in 2012, so the job market was still for crap, and anyone who had graduated college in the last 4 to 5 years was actively fighting for any and all open positions of any sort still. Be it in waiting tables, answering phones, landscaping, nannying, under the table work, and obviously any entry-level positions. So I managed to get an interview with a marketing firm. I'm sure most of you know where this is going. It was a direct marketing service. service, where you go door to door. My first interview goes well, and I'm a bit confused as this was in an office park suite office. They purportedly have 55 employees, yet this office suite was 2 offices and a small front desk area for the secretary. Where was everyone's desks, I asked myself. Later that night, I received a call back for a second interview, so for a second weekend in a row, I head back to my hometown, miss my current job, and 2 weekends in a row worth of cash working at a late-night restaurant, and gas money for 2 round trips, totaling in at around $100 in gas, 2 full tanks, and a loss of almost an entire $375 paycheck for that half of the month, plus a solid $150 in tips for each weekend missed. Showed up for the second interview, and instead of sitting in that little office and answering more questions, meeting people around the office and the like, they take me and 6 other people outside. We're then told we will be going out in the field for the day and knocking on doors. None of us were told about this, so all 4 of us females are in interview suits in heels. I start immediately hounding the interviewer and insist I am being told where I'm being taken, and he says he isn't at liberty to disclose that. So I confrontingly state, let me get this straight. You want me, a 20-something female, to get into a car with out-of-state plates with 3 men I've never met before, to go somewhere unknown, to walk around somewhere unknown for an unknown amount of time on the fly, and I have to turn my cell phone off? He just looks at me like a moron after I've spelled out how sketchy this all is. So after some awkward silence, I continue, how dare you lie to myself and all of these other clearly desperate folks about every aspect of this job and cost me money to get here. Screw you if you think I'll come with you, and screw you again if you think I won't go into details on this to the BBB. It's then that he flips out and follows me as I head back into the office park. The interview room now has been retransformed into the CEO's office, nameplate and everything. When they asked me what I was doing, I demanded my resume back from their pile and told them I'd be spreading the word and make sure others know before coming in here. They freaked out, offered to pay me back for my gas to try and prevent me from reporting them. I let them write me a check, and just as I was leaving their office/interview room, a new slew of kiddos my age were shuffling in for their ill-fated interviews. I warned them all loudly and cursed out the CEO again, and was followed out by all 8 people. They were supposed to interview again. Being a journalism student, I did the only thing worse than reporting them, which I also did. I got in contact with a local reporter for the paper who was a friend of mine and got them to run an article about scam companies and interviewing vulnerable and desperate recent grads. Their company logo made the header of the page. I actually personally have some experience with fraud companies. I did an interview in 2019 and I joined a company for a little bit. I won't go into details on what it was, but I always got this very weird feeling about everyone there. Not everyone there, but the people who owned the place, I guess. And as it turned out, when I was discussing it with someone that I worked with, a while later, like a few years later, and we ran into each other, I asked about it, and they were like, oh yeah, they were actually using it as a cover to sell the devil's lettuce, and who knows what else. And I was just like, oh my freaking god, I knew that place was off. After that, I was glad I was only there for maybe a month or 2. This was during a mock interview while I was in college. The professor had her husband come in and we had to go in one by one and do an interview just like in real life. Well, everyone is going in and coming out smiling, not taking too long, so I thought it would be a cakewalk. My turn is next. I go in and everything is going smoothly. He takes a look at my resume and sees that I was in the military. He asks, tell me about your time in the military. So I tell him what I did, that I worked with a variety of different people from different backgrounds with different views on life and opinions, and that I supervise people, etc. He says, okay, good, and continues with the interview, asks a few more questions, then says, tell me about your time in the military. I figured maybe he didn't realize he already asked that question, or maybe it was a test, so I repeated what I said. He starts turning slowly in his chair, looking at the ceiling, and says again, tell me about your time in the military. I just looked at him. He stopped spinning in his chair and looked at me. After about 20 seconds, he says, okay, we're done here. I got a B. What secret are you hiding from everyone but okay to share with us here? That I'm leaving my job in a few weeks. I keep having people try and schedule things with me months in advance where I'm sort of forced to smile and agree. It's always weird to be in that space of too early to give notice.
I was abused by a neighbor in my adolescence. I didn't tell anybody because I was a boy and embarrassed by it all. The thought of my dad or brothers finding out was too much. Just packed it away. He died when I was away at college. Good riddance. I concur. I found out recently that I have an extra $10,000 in student debt. It's a pretty big secret. I failed high school twice and I'm faking going to college, but instead taking high school final exams. I feel sad and disappointed looking at my parents' faces, but I can't do anything. Instead, just give my best in the exams. My exams are from 2nd of July. Please wish me luck. I really need it. I mean, this was like 5 years ago, so I hope you passed it by now, bud. I am a pathological liar. I don't even mean to do it, but I just do at this point, and it scares me a bit. I am fixing it, though. That's a goddamn lie, and you know it! The family computer didn't break because of downloading music. It was me and my adolescent internet browsing. Oh boy, I've been there, buddy. It seems stupid, but after 3 kids and divorce, I can't figure out my frickin' life, neither where I'm going. I carry around regrets and mom guilt, and I'm completely lost. My wife cheated on me, and we're going through the start of the divorce process. My family doesn't even know. I'm in agony every day. I had some surgery that went very, very wrong, and I am struggling to keep motivated to keep going. I'm a grown man, and I love Winnie the Pooh. I don't own any memorabilia or anything, but I watch YouTube videos, and if I see it on TV, I have to watch it. Hey, buddy, I love Winnie the Pooh too. I don't think there's a single individual on this planet that doesn't, on some level, love Winnie the Pooh, except for maybe the leader of the CCP. I like having crushes, but not actually doing anything about them. Partially because I enjoy the blissful feeling of liking someone, and partially because that gets ruined whenever I actually do anything about it. I regret deeply not bonding more with my college class. I just now realized that I was liked by them and I kinda pushed them away all these years. I want to tell my boyfriend I love him, but I think he needs to get help for his mental health issues before this relationship moves forward. Honey, according to women, that's just about every man in the world. But you do you. I'm afraid of my neighbor. I don't know why, but he just creeps me out. He's always staring at me, occasionally making comments on my body. Oh, is that you? I thought for sure someone sent a model over. You have a great body for a teenager. Those shorts look awfully short on you. I'm 14. He and my dad are friends and is always over at my house. When he comes over, I'll always hide in my room. My mom doesn't like him either because of the time he came during my baby sister's sleepover and just sat in silence at the fire pit while my dad went inside to get drinks. I'm afraid to say anything to my dad because I know he isn't able to get out with his friends a lot and he really likes my neighbor, but I can't shake the feeling that something is just off with him. A few of these are being quite relatable and we're only 3 minutes in. I also dislike my neighbor. And not because he makes inappropriate comments about my body, but that would certainly be a problem. I'm really big on honesty because of growing up with a narcissistic parent. However, I never tell people that I am bipolar. I am a PTA mom in the suburbs. The judgment and stigma that would come along with that knowledge would likely affect my entire family. I am physically falling apart. My health is a chain of unfortunate events. I quit smoking, I barely drink, I stay physically fit enough to remain in the military, yet I fight every day just to pretend I am okay. I'm tired of being in physical pain with every little thing, but I will continue the charade until something finally gives permanently. It actually scares me. I hate that I'm 45 years old and feel as if I'm 80. The secret is that everyone I know thinks I'm so strong. I've overcome so much. I'm a fighter. Blah, blah, blah. The reality is I live in daily pain and it's starting to wear on me physically and emotionally. Finally, I just started seeing a therapist. I was afraid to, but I can't handle the anxiety by myself anymore. It's civilian. I simply have lost faith in the military medical system. Not sure how I feel about it yet, but it's not hurting me so far. Glad to hear you're starting to get help. My maternal grandfather was a hitman who killed several politicians and activists in his country during a very corrupt time. He moved to the US and remarried. My paternal grandfather was a corrupt politician who hired hitmen on his political opponents and embezzled right before stepping down from office and avoiding indictment. Not sure if they ever met because this is all I know and found this all out by chance. I don't even think my own parents know this much. That is a pretty insane goddamn coincidence. Like, wow. Recorded my fiance yesterday. I got him to talk about his D&D character and I didn't want to forget anything because I'm going to commission an art piece of it for his birthday. It's killing me to keep it a secret because I tell him everything. I hope he likes it. Whoever this lucky man might be, she's a keeper, my friend. When I was reading that, I was expecting it to go in a different direction. Thank goodness. That was wholesome. I sometimes hope my grandma passes away soon.
She has severe dementia and Alzheimer's, and my mom is the only person my grandma will allow to help her, which means she's basically on call 24/7. She's aggressive, a runner, and basically has the mind of a toddler. I feel like a butthole for thinking it, but we've been mourning losing who she used to be. Losing her physically would mean she could be at peace, and my mom could finally take a break. You know, as someone whose grandmother also suffered from memory loss and mental issues towards the end of her life, I understand to a degree. I never got to that point, but yeah, no, it is sad to lose someone on an emotional level in your life that to the point where they don't even remember you. It's sad. It's hard. About 15 years ago, I slept with my high school teacher. Literally never spoke about it out loud to anyone, ever. This is actually the first time I wrote it down even. Guess 15 years is long enough for it to feel like it just doesn't matter anymore. I lost contact with all of my friends months ago. I still try to be happy and smile through everything. I'm a pretty positive person. I think there will come better times, but especially now in summertime when I see everyone on social media or going out swimming or having cookouts, it's kind of sad to be at home all the time or go for a walk by yourself all the time. Why is it so hard to find new friends? Damn. One is the loneliest number you can ever do. Whenever I think about that song, I think of Recess the movie. Anyway, I'm sorry you're feeling very lonely, dude. One of my best friend's dad cheated on their wife with a secretary or something and she got pregnant. They kept her baby. That was around the time my friend was born. Fast forward 19 years later on, I meet this guy at work who looks a lot like my friend. When he figures out that I know him, he tells me his story. My friend to this day doesn't know he has a half-brother living in the same city as him, and I can't tell him because the half-brother promised me not to because his dad won't allow it. Pretty screwed up. The father of both told the half-brother to not tell his brother about his existence or he will stop supporting his college education, among other things. Why, you may ask? Because his wife doesn't know about him, and that will definitely destroy their marriage and family, which is selfish as all hell. I cannot say anything either because if I do, I will be the architect of a marriage and family falling apart, or worse, for something which is really not any of my business and didn't ask to be a part of. The thing is that the half-brother wants to be the one to go directly to his brother and tell him everything when he's financially capable of supporting himself, and that's something I have to respect. I've known my friend since childhood, and it hurts me not to tell him, but I've been trying to find a way to let him know without being the architect of anything. The 23andMe thing is actually a good idea, and I've taken it into consideration. I appreciate the idea, so I might see if I can come up with something. Buddy, that right there sounds like a whole lot of none ya. None ya what? None ya business. And I'm sure that Secret Love Child Man has a plan, a process, he will get it done in due time, but don't push it.
I'm a digital artist who made a bunch of paid commissions already. However, it's all cheated. I used a software for the anatomy and just trace over it. I become that good in line art and coloring, where the obvious tracer red flags don't work anymore. I've never wanted this to come that far, but as soon as I made my first trace drawing, I got sucked into an abyss that is impossible to leave. All my friends know me as the artist. There are many I wouldn't ever have been able to talk to without my art, but most importantly, my parents are proud of my work and call me talented. For the fact that I live in constant fear that my parents are disappointed in me, hearing them compliment my drawings is everything to me. But it hurts so much, seeing them love a work I've no right to present, especially when I try to fit in and complain about tracers while I'm just one of them. This is going on for 3 years by now. Bloody hell, don't trace. Either you get caught or you'll suffer because you weren't brought to your senses.
Not only do I free the raccoons the homeowners association is trying to catch, but I feed them beef tips while I eat frozen dinners. Not sorry. I once saw one of those little freaks rip off a car antenna ornament and run away with glee, and that was hilarious, and now we are homies for life. Well, I can already tell you're an individual that likes to fly pretty close to the sun. Do not play this game, my friend. I have been down this road. You will be tried for treason when they find out your identity. Your family won't be safe. Your loved ones, your friends, they're all dead if they find out you freed those raccoons. Why, oh, why would you even risk incurring the wrath of the Homeowners Association of all things? Even though I have a master's degree, I don't know if I'll ever figure out what I want to do with my life. Nothing really pulls me. Well, you know, that sucks, but things could be way worse. You could be a guy without a master's degree and still not have a pull in life whatsoever. That's certainly not the worst situation to be in, and you know, some people don't have a pull in life and also don't have a master's degree. You're in a good situation. You have a qualification. You can do that until you find your passion. Just keep on broadening your horizons, and eventually you'll find it. I hope you do.
I touch myself in the bathroom at work sometimes. I would literally never tell that to a soul.
HR is long overdue to have a word with you. I wish a couple of my exes would talk to me again, even just as friends. I miss them a lot.
I emotionally abuse myself hardcore. It's to the point now where my life seems to be falling apart because of it. I don't know how to stop either. I can get all the positive things said, but I don't believe it. I doubt every bit of it, telling myself they don't see all the bad because I hide it. The worst part is knowing all this and not believing myself.
My dog was put down today in my arms. I don't want my friends to know. I don't want their I'm sorries and condolences. I don't know what I want, but not that. No hugs. I want to mourn in my own way. Other than my family, I want to climb this mountain myself. I want to be able to use the word mate so badly. I can't stand it, but I don't want to seem crazy. I'm an American. I've got a fair few American friends, and I've heard one or two of them say mate in, like, the friendly way, obviously, and yeah, there's something weird about it. Maybe it's their specific accents, but it does weirdly sound wrong. I flushed a Capri Sun juice box into the toilet and blamed it on my little sister. I was 8 at the time, and because of me, we had to open the pipes to remove it. Still haven't told anyone. Everyone thinks my chicken is amazing, but I just buy Popeyes and Churches and mix them together on a plate. Man literally went, but what if I were to purchase fast food and disguise it as my own cooking? Delightfully devilish, Seymour. I was a waiter at a local restaurant. The other night, a man paid his check for the family and tipped me on $158 by giving me $180 in total, in 20s. Now, he had been there for hours and been really annoying, so I had been happy to get anything from him. While I'm counting out the money, the man approached me, says he gave me too much and takes a $20 bill back, giving me a $2 tip. I bit my tongue and walked away. Fast forward, I go to sweep under his table to see his driver's license fell out onto the ground. I casually swept it up and threw it away because screw that guy. He can go waste time at the DMV just like I wasted time serving him. You know what? I might not agree with it, but good for you. You got your pound of flesh. My girlfriend and I have been dating for 4 years now, and for 4 years we've been dating, I have always found her mother to be very, very attractive. I often fantasize about her. I know I'm weird, can't help it. I recently bought 2 baby goats. My wife doesn't know. I picked them up on Saturday. This is gonna go one of 2 ways, fingers crossed. I wish you and your goats good luck, sir.
I have a corn snake in my no-pet apartment, and 2 of my roommates don't know. Shh.
There's a bit of backstory here. I'm adopted and I have a great relationship with my biological family. I was born in Montana and I live in the southern Midwest. I only met my great-grandmother once when she passed. I was asked to come up to Montana because she left me something in her will and testimony. I had to read the will and testimony with my biological father. She left me a 150-acre ranch with a house and a bunker, and it's paid off. I have never told my adoptive family that I own the land and that all of my money goes to preparing all the bunker for super big emergency situations. Inherits land, becomes a doomsday prepper. You know what? It's not a bad use for it. I attempted self-deletion, and then when I lived, barely, I made it my life's work to create a non-profit for stressed-out students in school. Truthfully, it's just my way of fighting the self-deletion thoughts I have. It kills me how disinterested my family and friends are in supporting me. But I continue forward since I do help kids and am proud of what I do. Maybe one day I can afford healthcare and I can fix my own head. It feels so selfish to volunteer and help in the community when I can't afford food and have to beg for help from my parents. I work for the school district and no work in the summer. I just wish there was a way for me to meet others like me. There has to be others out there who lived and are like, now what? Kids love my programs, but unfortunately, I don't have a head for business. It's definitely commendable that you're trying to help others in such a way, but I also think it's important to learn to live within your means and help yourself before you try to help others, because, well, when you're out of luck and out of funds or whatever, then who's going to help the people that you've been supporting? I really want to call CPS on my niece-in-law. Her 4-year-old daughter is still in diapers, has a vocabulary of under 40 words, and rotted her front teeth down to the gum line, likely because she still drinks from a bottle. This poor child's parents don't give half a damn about her, and it kills me every time I visit. The only reason I don't is because their house belongs to my mother-in-law, and between it being overcrowded, 7 humans, and far too many cats, 9? Someone would have to intervene in response to the CPS call.
I just want somebody to hold, bro. Me too, buddy. Me too. I have DID, dissociative identity disorder, and I haven't told anyone for 4+ years. I was going to tell my family last year, but then Split came out and they saw it almost immediately. So if that's not an awkward time to break it to your parents and siblings that you've got the same mental disorder as a fictional murderer in a movie, by the way, Split was relatively inaccurate on certain DID things, just for y'all's education, that they just happened to watch, there's no way I would be believed. I'm going to be killing off my character in D&D and have their body become possessed by a ghost and have that be my new character, but have them pretend to be the original person. It's complicated, but fun as hell for me personally. One day, I walked out to my backyard and saw my dad standing by our compost pile with a couple buckets of dirt and the hose. He was taking a handful of dirt and spraying through them with the hose. I asked him what he was up to. At first, he wouldn't tell me and tried to brush me off. I persisted, and eventually, he told me that early in my mother and his marriage, he had lost his wedding ring when doing work along the side of the house. At the time, he went out and bought an identical ring to the original, and my mom was none the wiser. Apparently, for the last 15 years, when spring comes around and he does any cleaning on that side of the house, he searches through the dirt. My mom still doesn't know he lost the original ring. Personally, I actually think that is so sweet. I burned down my neighbor's house and my family paid them, the neighbors, over $500,000 under the table so that I wouldn't get in trouble, and so that they could buy a new house, a new car, and new furniture, and all that. This was back when I was 7 years old, and I regret it all now. No one else knows this except for my family, my neighbors, and myself. My bathroom is 3 flights down, and let me tell you that sometimes I just don't make it before an accident happens, so I bought a Shiwi and now pee in a bottle if I need to in the middle of the night. The relief is awesome. I'm basically always anxious and furious at the office about how little work I have at my job. I have 10 years experience doing this, so crap doesn't take me very long, even when I spend extra time on something, so it looks like I have more to do than I actually have. It's 100% the company's fault. During the interview, I even said that the position doesn't seem like it'll have a lot of work and asked what the day-to-day is like. They laughed and said I definitely have enough work, but I don't. The most annoying part, aside from trying to look busy all day, is a couple people who are higher than me give me crap about my office hours, despite them screwing around all day, never being at their desk, taking more vacation and sick days than we have allotted, and constantly working from home despite the office weirdly not being too down with that officially. I come in about 20 minutes late every day and leave about 20 minutes early. I eat lunch at my desk like a sad employee because I always want to be around in case someone decides they have something for me to do. I'm at my desk more than these couple of people that give me crap for it. They sometimes say they were looking for me, but I wasn't at my desk. And when I excitedly ask what they wanted and if they had work for me, they say no, and then disappear for the next couple hours. They're just giving me crap. I do all the work assigned to me and even do stuff on my own that I feel needs to be done. There is a backlog of work I've completed that no one has implemented. I can't implement it. Some of it is almost a year old. I always ask if people have crap for me to do, and only a couple people ever do. I am constantly worried that I'm going to get fired, despite the company actually needing me and my work. But due to other crappy employees, office politics, and bureaucracy, I have about an hour of work a day, if that. It's also pretty difficult to get jobs at my level in my field, so every day I just have to be anxious and angry, assuming I'm going to get canned before I find a new job. It's definitely infuriating when you're in a work environment that just isn't functioning correctly, especially when you are not the issue at hand. It's just a general thing and other people screwing you over. I was visiting some family on a farm, and they have these geese that are super aggressive and always trying to flex on everybody, and one of them came at me a few weeks ago, and all I did was clap back and touch one feather just to show it I was serious, and then it turned around and ran into my parked car and just looked super upset and confused. It wasn't hurt, and it literally just walked into a car, but it looked so sad that moment, and I feel so guilty. I took the cookie from the cookie jar. I am secretly dating my ex-girlfriend's best friend. Neither of us have told anyone because we know how much word tends to get around, and she doesn't want to lose her friend. What are people's feelings on that? Is it bad to date your friend's ex wholesale, just outright, or is there a mature and, good way to go about it? Like, if the two or everyone can be mature about the whole thing, I'm curious. I never learned how to put my bra on behind my back like a normal person. I hook it up and put it on like a shirt. There is still hope for you. You can just get a bra that you don't need to hook.
When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Linked in the description below.